Hey guys. This is part 4 of What If Naruto Can Use Chakra Chains. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start.
We are pain, that's all. We are God.
Chapter 13 Finals. Pins and needles stabbing at the nerves all over her body would be a good comparison to how she felt. The gentle fist wasn't no for the immediate pain it caused, but rather for its potentially lasting damage. Because it involved disrupting organs and shutting down chakra points, the more points were shut down the longer you lasted, and the less free-flowing chakra a shinobi had to heal the longer it took. So the ratio of damage via Juken to the recovery rate was something that could change exponentially. Hinata didn't have many of her points sealed off, but she was struck in critical areas and suffered some organ damage. The medics told her it would be a few weeks at a minimum before she would be able enough to resume her shinobi training. Her eyes fluttered open before squinting as they adjusted to the light. The room wasn't that bright, but she had hardly been conscious over the past several days, and her body was falling out of sync. It didn't take her training as a kunoichi, however, to notice there was someone sitting right next to her bed. She went on guard but was shocked to see Naruto sitting in the chair. He was leaning back in it with his arms crossed. One lone eye opened slightly to lock with hers before the other followed, showing he had been asleep. Looks like it was good that I decided to wait this time. Her hands scrunched up the sheets as she trained in vain to sink into the bed and hide herself, only to wince in pain as she moved in a direction that brought a wave of soreness. And then Naruto-kun? Why are you here? Well, the only reason I would be here would be to check up on you. She blushed heavily at his simple words and smile. He didn't try to color up his words, but he knew the blunt honesty of his words would get to her. But he found the mouse girl's reactions cute. He took note of her state of dress, having had her purple jacket removed, showing a dark purple V-neck shirt. He rose an eyebrow, forgetting to be discreet about it. Kuromi's physical age is about 16. I know her body is healthy for the age she tries to appear as, but I wasn't really expecting Hinata, who is only a little younger, to have just as stacked a chest. He looked back at Hinata's face, seeing her trying to hide her face beneath the bangs of her shoulder-length hair. Sorry, how are you feeling, Hinata? Well, I don't think I can move around much just yet. Ya Niji did do a number on you, huh? He spoke darkly, causing Hinata to try and placate him. And Naruto-kun, don't be mad at him. He hasn't had an easy life, and my family hasn't been the best to him. A lot of people have had hard lives. It's how you pick yourself up that matters the most. Besides, I get the feeling that most of the main branch of your clan doesn't care about him, but you actually do, don't you? She nodded her head slowly, not sure where he was going with this. So he lashes out against one of the only family members that actually is on his side? That means he's a coward. But being a coward will not save him from me in the first round of the finals. Why, you're facing him? Her voice hitched from surprise. And he will pay. Please don't kill him. He looked down at her for a moment to see her sweating a little from exertion. Sorry, I'm probably only making you feel worse. He sighed as he stood up to leave. As he turned, Hinata found her voice again. Wait. I am happy you came to see me. I'm just returning the favor. You used to always watch after me after all. It was fun pretending to not notice. He walked back to her bedside, smirking as she turned red at one of her embarrassing secrets being thrown out. He put his palm on her forehead, feeling she had a fever, and leaned his face in close to hers. Just relax, Hinata-chan. I'll take care of everything. It looked like her face was going to explode from the built-up blood before her body couldn't take it anymore, and so she fainted. He laughed at her expense as he walked out the door. When he did, he blinked as he came face to face with a girl who looked much like Hinata, at the same height but leaner and long brown hair. Well, they weren't exactly level since he was almost a head taller than Hinata, so he had to look down at this girl. She looked around him to see Hinata passed out on her bed before scowling at Naruto. Who are you and what business do you have with my sister? Her tone was hard, as if ready to hurt him. Well, my name's Naruto and dash. Oh, alright then. The girl visibly relaxed and walked around him to her sister's bedside. Naruto just stood there confused before quickly turning around. Wait, I didn't even explain myself. The girl looked back at him oddly before giving a short giggle. My name is Hanabi. I am Nei-chan's younger sister. She speaks highly of you, so as long as I see she is unharmed, I see no need to cause an issue. Oh. All right then. Easier for him then. He shrugged as he went back out the door before she called out again. I believe you are fighting our cousin in the finals of the Chunin exams? I have nothing really against Niji Nizan other than some spite for him putting my sister in this condition, but my sister took an interest in you, so don't be disappointing. Are you siding with me? I am just saying it would be much more favorable if you were to win than our cousin. Like I would lose to someone like that. He waved her off and finally left. Hanabi sat there in silence for a few moments, as she heard him walk off. She looked over her sister for a second before she held her cheeks, feeling them hot and red. When it comes to men, Nichan's eyes are unmatched. It really sucked that her sister saw him first. Not like he wasn't seeing anyone else at the moment, or anything. Irony. 3 days later, Naruto was sitting cross-legged out in the wilderness, sitting right next to the trench Jiraiya had brought him out to previously. He had his thumbs to his palms, as between his index and middle finger, and then his ring finger and pinky he held 4 sheets of paper. Jiraiya was not that far away as he was writing into his notebook, but every now and then he would look back at the boy in awe. Kuromi, who was in her fox form watching from a distance in a nearby tree, was also pleasantly surprised by her container's drive. The 4 sheets of paper were all actually chakra paper. One paper already had a fine cut halfway down the middle, another was wrinkling. The other 2 sheets, however, suffered no changes. This kid is unbelievable. Hardly even into his teens, and yet he is already doing elemental training. And not just in 1 element but 4? I had heard from Sensei that he had someone acquired a new bloodline, but to come this far on his own already. And he learned Rasengan in 2 days. Another thing also bothered Jiraiya though, but he pushed that into the back of his head. The kid may be stock still as a statue while using his chakra, but he was no sage. That was a completely different matter, and the boy didn't even have a summoning contract. With my eyes closed like this, I can feel everything around me even better than before. I can feel both what is inside and outside me. Slowly the 3rd paper started to darken and burn at its edges. First step is to feel my chakra, then to separate it. After that I need to actually be able to use the base elements freely. After that, who knows what I will be able to do with them combined again. Kuromi watched on at her love sitting blindfolded. She doubted the human could feel it, but Naruto's chakra, even at such a low level as it was currently being expelled, was resonating with the air around them. She wasn't sure what it was, but she started thinking about the old man that created her and her siblings. Looking at her container always going forward was definitely inspiring. Maybe I should train as well. She was great as a bijou, but now that she had lived the past half year or so in a more human form with actual interaction with her host, it was like the imaginative side of her intelligence had soared. So why not put that to use and make the form that she had stuck to quite often lately an actual threat in battle? Naruto finally moved, which only involved him turning his head to the trench behind him as if he could see it with his eyes covered. I wonder how sound would behave at the bottom of that. Ho! Lee roared as the ground around him cracked. He had a large boulder balancing on each arm as he stood crouched. A thin haze of chakra could be seen around his body as his veins bulged from stress. Good, Lee. Keep pushing. Go even further past your own limits, and show the heights of your youth. Yes, Guy-sensei. Youth. This was no ordinary training even by their standards. Guy wanted to increase Lee's stamina rapidly as well as increase the durability of his body. It was a risky move, but to do it in a month, the only thing he could think about was this. Lee was holding up with already the 2nd gear activated. But he was not holding those boulders up with solely his muscles. No, he was flaring his chakra through his arms to make them rigid and hold strong like the thick limbs of a tree. For someone like Lee, who did not have talent in jutsu or the coils to do very many chakra exercises, something as simple and mediocre as firing out his chakra was something even he could manage. The question was how long he could do it, and so one of 2 things would happen. Lee would either learn how to hold chakra in his own limbs to strengthen and reinforce them, or his chakra reserves will grow so that he can keep exhausting it for longer periods of times. Bigger reserves or better control with a better adjusted body. Both of them ideal for Lee for various reasons, but which path would Lee take? It had been 2 weeks, but Lee had actually started to make some ground. Keep going, Lee. Show the world what kind of shinobi you are. The other Jinchuriki had their own work set out for them. Yujito was short of breath as the ground in front of her was scorched black. Killer Bee, with him being a master of his bijou, took to training Yujito more over the month. Similar to Naruto, she was a gifted shinobi without the powers of her beast. However, unlike Naruto, as far as she knew anyway, she could actually use her beast and use it at a high level. It would be her skills with her beast that would give her the edge over him, hopefully, and her own experience as a shinobi. So that would leave Gaara and Fu. Not bad kitten, but not hot enough. She had a talent for lightning, and her skill with fire thanks to the cat inside her was a force in and of itself. However, it was not yet to the level of her bijou, whose flames were said to even burn underwater and burn the souls of the dead to ash. If she can get her own flames to even near that level, then she will be able to fully counter Gaara's sand and hopefully the shell armor of Fu's beast. I have to burn hotter. Much hotter! A blue tail of flame sprouted from her tailbone as she phoned a blue flame between her palms and continued to try and condense it. She wasn't someone with a natural disposition towards their bijou like Gaara or a monstrous prodigy on the level of Fu when it came to using their bijou. She would like to say she was out of pride, but she would not allow herself to truly believe that her talent was even on the same level as Naruto's. No, each container was unique vastly, and of the three in the area that were her rivals, she was the most balanced of them and fell in the middle. But even if she fell behind in any individual category compared to her fellow containers who were all at the top of at least one category, she was still a genius, and with enough work there was no clear gap between any of them, and she had the experience to close it even further. The Nibi manifested itself outside her as a small flaming cat and watched her. I wonder what Kyubi and her host are doing right now. Mew. A lithe mint-haired girl stretched contently as she felled another large animal. Fu had taken to the forest of death, as she thought it was a fun place and great to train. Behind her was a pile of large mutated dead animals. There was the scattered corpses of a few abnormally large snakes, and one of them looked like they were bisected cleanly down the middle, yet the girl had no weapons to accomplish such a thing on her. Well, that's another technique down. She gathered air in her cheeks before expelling it in a pink mist. It quickly dispersed and traveled through the air looking for targets. After a few minutes, Fu could hear trees being toppled over and the ground shake. Her eyes widened as she gave out a happy whistle, seeing a caravan-sized boar stampeding towards. Oh, you're a big one! She put a finger to her chin and thought. That reminds me of Naru. Her thoughts grew dirty as she blushed and shook the thoughts away. And no, not that. The boar was dangerously close now, but she wasn't too concerned by it. Let's see what did Fu see Naru use against that dog boy. She balanced on one foot and a pair of dragonfly wings sprouted from her back. Right. When the boar was about to trample her, she jumped up and spun with instant acceleration thanks to her wings. She kicked out her foot and met the side of the boar's jaw so hard its face actually caved in and it died. She landed daintily back on her foot and dusted herself off. Not quite the same as Nara's, but I made it work. Her bijou was silent during most of her training. At first it disliked the girl, but it got over it fast. One day the girl just randomly had been able to use her wings, bypassing all the training in her tailed modes as if it were natural for her. What made things scary was that the girl was so free-spirited and learned quickly through mimicry and imitation. It was because the girl being that way that the Hanabi even allowed her to use her power. The giant insect inside her wondered if maybe there was a similar reason to why someone as prideful as a bijou, especially Kyubi, had allowed herself such a civil relationship with her host. That host. The boy with the sun hair. Something about him wasn't right. Just thinking about him made filled Fu's ears with an oddly anxious buzzing and made the Nanabi's exoskeleton quiver. Long pale legs crossed themselves as Snake Princess herself Yamada looked off into blank space. Her expression was unreadable. Whether her emotions were negative or positive, onlookers could not be sure. Kabuto sweated a little knowing how she could be at times and kept a good distance just in case. That boy broke through my seal completely. There is not even but a trace of it left in him. How is this possible? I monitored the integrity of the seal, so I know the seal specifically was not just undone. It was like his body had degraded and erased it on its own. Was this from the fox's power or something else? If the boy was aware of the seal being gone, and how it happened, then he could be an even bigger threat to her than she thought previously. But why would an outcast, a pariah such as that boy, refuse such power to get his revenge? Does he simply not care? Yes. How dare he not know the value of what I've given him? That will be his own foolish mistake, but no matter. No one denies me. Yamada-sama, what about Sasuke? Oh right. The Uchiha. Well, the Sharingan is good too. I have to remember to get that as well. M'lady, have you completely forgotten your objective dash? The snake woman bit her thumb in frustration, completely tuning out Kabuto. Damn it, I must know that boy's secrets. What has that old bat Danzo been hiding from me? No matter, in a couple weeks I will take that boy and the village for myself. A long snake-like tongue lolled out of her mouth as she held her face and shivered. I can't wait. Off in another location, our blonde shivered as well. Kaiten! A dome of visible chakra became apparent as it deflected a wave of kunai and shuriken. As the dome died down, Niji slid into focus in his fighting stance. Tenten, who had been helping him train, dropped to her knees panting. Wow, I couldn't get through at all. That defense is perfect, Niji. Of course it is, it's an ultimate technique of the Hyuga clan. Niji spoke smugly. If this can deflect any attack, then I bet you could win the finals. Niji so badly wanted to agree with her, but there were several gaps in information present. Tenten, just like Naruto, had not been present to see Gaara, Fu, and Yujito fight, as she had been unconscious from her loss to Temari. All three of them beat their opponents very easily, and they definitely won faster and with less effort than when Naruto fought Kiba. The other missing information Tenten didn't have is the fact that she had not witnessed the fight between Lee and Niji. He shook his head, keeping his serious face. It won't matter. Lee is the biggest threat, those other three and the village outcasts are just chakra hotspots. The 8 gates can give even a civilian power beyond the Kage at great risk, and yet I've already been developing a way to even shut those down. If I can shut the chakra of those 4 down, then their actual fighting capabilities would be no more, if not drastically less, than that of Lee. Niji's plan showed that he did put a good deal of thought into it, but of the 4 potential threats, he had forgotten a few things. Gentle Fist had to have certain parameters present to maximize its effectiveness. One of the threats kept opponents from ever making contact with him. The other 2 were very fast and agile, so it would be a game of tag. And then there was Naruto. Something about him. He didn't know what it was, but his eyes kept telling him not to touch that monster. As if he shouldn't even bother. Oh heh, Niji flinched as a wave went over the village. The sound was near deafening, yet he could tell it was coming from quite a ways away. He turned on his Byakugan to find its point of origin, and did only to recoil as he such of his eyes. He was near blinded as he saw what looked like some kind of ravine erupting in a geyser of brilliantly shining chakra. There was enough of it that he had not been able to look at it for more than a second. Around the village and nearby areas no one knew what was going on, and yet they all looked into the same direction. Sasuke, Shino, Shikamaru, Gaara, Killer Bee, Kakashi, Hiruzen, Danzo, Yujito, Fu, all of them feeling it, yet only Danzo knew who was the cause of it. The chakra slowly died down, and a hand grasped at the edge of the cliff, cracking it from effort. Damn it, Jiraiya, I know I told you to cover the walls of this trench in toad oil, but did you have to use so damn much? Naruto was sweating harder than he had from any training he had ever experienced. Kuromi, who had been waiting for him the past week, had her fur standing on end when Naruto emerged. I haven't eaten and I hardly slept, as I hard to survive against what was done there as well as train, and yet Naruto stood up out of the trench all the way. I feel amazing. Both Jiraiya and Kuromi were shocked to see that not only did Naruto feel stronger, but he had grown a bit as well. That wasn't all of it. What did this kid do down there? If I didn't know better, I would have thought a new Bija had been born. Or a star exploded. What's up, Erosenin? Naruto pushed the headband up his forehead so that he could actually look at Jiraiya. Seeing what he saw uncovered, Jiraiya paled. Those eyes. You look like you've seen a ghost? The month had come and gone before they knew it. An audience from various regions of the ninja world had come to gather at the Chunin Stadium. To the amazement of veterans who had visited the stadium before it had been expanded. The stadium was a little larger, but the arena below was much bigger than it looked, making use of seals to distort space and be several times larger than what physics would allow. This made anyone in the stadium also look unnaturally small because all perspectives from the stands were zoomed out. To account for this, multiple TV screens were mounted around the stadium to display the event. Danzo's Root really did do an excellent job getting this stadium renovated so quickly. The weathered Hokage was indeed impressed at how quickly his old rival accomplished the task at hand. I say, things certainly do look different from what I remember. Sarutobi turned to see the Kazekage approach him with his guards in tow. Most of his body was concealed in the standard Hokage attire, making it hard to see his features, yet Sarutobi still felt like there was something off. Kazekage-dano, it has been far too long. I hope your trip was well? The man nodded, but before much could be said, a hulking dark man came in through the door with his 2 guards Darui and C following behind him. I hope the trip all the way here was not a waste of my time. I have no doubt my shinobi will perform well, but I hope at least one of your genin have some spine to them. At the rakish gruff way of greeting, Sarutobi simply laughed lightheartedly. I hope so too. My village is being represented as well after all. It had been a long time since Kumo nin of such status had been in the village, so of course a number of Konoha shinobi were on edge. Kumo was always a strong rival. In fact, if anything, between their technology and military might, Kumo might actually be stronger than Konoha at this point. Especially with them having 3 Jinchuriki. My, it's a shame I wasn't able to have any of my own shinobi in attendance. Hopefully that can change in the future. The Kages looked confused at the voice, only for Hiruzen to almost do a double take at the sight of the red-headed beauty that was the new Mizukage. The civil war in Mist had only recently ended, so they had not the chance to recover their numbers or rebuild their academies, but to make herself known she still decided to travel to the Chunin exams since it was an international event, and had her own guards with her. It's a pleasure to meet your acquaintance Mizukage Dano. There was supposed to be 12 contestants present, but there were only 10 at the moment. The 2 missing were both from Team 7, Sasuke and Naruto. Where they were, the rest of them did not know. However, it was clear that just about all of them had grown over the month of training. Yujito's appearance had not changed much. She replaced her top with a long-sleeved dark purple shirt and kept her fingerless gloves on her hands. She kept the cat-tail style to her hair, but opted to have her bangs hang more freely. For other than growing physically a little, the only real change to her was her hair. It had grown messy over the month, and she had taken to tying it in the back in a short ponytail. A man with a bandana tying around his head, only letting the bangs of his brown hair show, and a sanban in his mouth showed up. Genma looked around before sighing. Well, let's get this started, shall we? The first fight of the exam will be Uzumaki Naruto vs Hyuga Niji. Will the 2 fighters please come up while the rest return to the stands out of the way? Some of the others didn't walk back knowing that Naruto wasn't there. Seems the failure knew he was fated to lose and took the smart option of not showing up. Niji scoffed, already feeling as if he had won. I'm right here. Everyone was startled, with Niji and Genma having the biggest displays of surprise. Naruto was slouching in his stance but was standing behind Genma, yet the man had never noticed him. How did he get behind me? The air around Naruto felt more and more alien to his peers as time went on, ever since he graduated from the academy, but now he was near unrecognizable. If it weren't for his physical appearance resembling his old one, then they wouldn't know who he was. He had grown noticeably now, being at a nice height of 5 feet 9 inches and still growing. Where at one point he was only taller than most of them, now he was taller than all of his peers except Lee, who seemed to match him in height. The upper half of his face was completely obscured by his headband. His hair, as if matching his trails in nature, looked more messy and slightly wilder. His jaw was firmer, and his body larger, as he had lost more of the boyish good looks he had to become what would be described as a young man. That, combined with his aura, he would be taken as a bigger threat than he was. He wasn't wearing anything extraordinary, as he simply wore black pants and a dark orange long-sleeve shirt worn loose, giving no indication of his body. Come on now, Niji, did you think I'd miss my own party? Naruto's arrival was welcomed by some of them as Lee, Fu, and Yujito all gave their own looks of acknowledgement and greetings towards him. Up in the stands, Hinata clasps her hands softly at seeing the only she cared for the most arrive safely. Naruto-kun. Yeah, Naruto kick his ass. Hinata blinked in surprise at hearing Kiba cheer Naruto on. This seemed to have surprised those around them, as well as Ino, who had arrived with Sakura, and the rest of the Konoha rookies who failed the preliminaries commented on it. You're cheering for Naruto? But didn't he kick your ass? Kiba growled at Ino. He may have beaten me, but after what that bastard did to Hinata, I'd rather Naruto win. Besides, if Naruto beats Niji, then it just makes my loss better. Genma looked to the Hokage, who nodded, giving his signal. The proctor turned to the 2 and held up his hand to start the match. If both fighters are ready, we will start the match. While killing is not encouraged, it is still allowed, but not indiscriminately. The match ends when I say it ends, and failure to comply will result in disqualification. Otherwise, the match is over when one of you is unable to continue. I've said all I've felt like saying, so if there is nothing else, begin. Niji slid into his family stance while Naruto just stood there. 20 seconds passed and Naruto still stood there unthreatened. This only raised Niji's ire. Do you really believe you can fight me without the use of your eyes? Naruto, who had not even been facing him, turned and tilted his head right at Naruto and grinned. Why not? It's not that hard to do. This made a vein pop on Niji's forehead as Naruto chuckled and turned to face him fully. It must really burn you up, huh, Niji? Someone has no issues with fighting a Byakugan user blind. Oh, the irony is not lost on me, I assure you. But it works out. You see, I'm about to show you how blind you really are. Wow, the stones on this kid. He truly thinks he can fight someone with the famed all-seeing eyes with such a huge handicap? The older eye-patched attendant to the Mizukage said. The Raikage nodded in agreement. Well, the boy has my attention, but I don't expect him to do it. Do you think this is a game? You might as well be accepting your fate to lose if you are hindering yourself in such a way. Come on now, Niji. I wanted to at least make things a little fair for you. The heat Naruto was throwing was just too much for Niji, as he was finally provoked by the words and charged at him. Niji was fast, even faster than he was in the preliminaries. He landed and did a palm strike right to Naruto's heart. Many in the crowd gasped as Niji went straight for an instant kill. Wow, the gentle fist really is gentle. Who would have guessed? Naruto gave out a mock of surprise as Niji backed off from him, dumbfounded as to why Naruto was not injured at all. He brought up his hand and tapped the side of his head. Oh, and I'm also covering my ears as well. That way they won't start to bleed when I make you cry like a bitch. What has gotten into him? Hiruzen stroked his beard, not sure what to make of it. Naruto did seem to have gained all the present Kage's attention, however. Niji just grew more pissed off as the veins around his eyes bulged and sunk into a lower stance. Well then, if you can still hear me, then know you are within my range. The three other important Hyuga present all grew shocked at what they knew was coming. Hinata held her mouth in fear for him. Oh no! Did he learn the secret technique on his own? Hayashi wondered as he looked on in amazement. 2 strikes hit Naruto's torso. Quick as the wind, 4 more strikes hit him like bee stings. Then the number of strikes doubled in stages, going up to 8 strikes, then 16 strikes, then 32. Finally he went even faster, and did the remaining 32 strikes to add to a total of 64. 8 trigrams, 64 palms. The final strike was the heaviest as Naruto went skidding back a few meters. Naruto stood frozen for a moment mid-knockback before relaxing and rolling his shoulders. Only time I'll ever compliment another guy on his foreplay. Really got the kinks out of my muscles. Though you look pretty androgynous anyway. Enough with the idiotic bravado. Your chakra has been sealed, and if your body isn't already failing, there is nothing else you can do. First of all, just from watching it a few times and now feeling it firsthand, I can tell you there are several flaws to the gentle fist. It is a fighting style that uses chakra, and so it can be detected easier than other styles for a sensor. Also, the style works by the user injecting their chakra into the user's body. This can be deadly, but there are flaws to this as well. The chakra injected into the body fully invades a tenketsu and clogs it, stopping chakra flow. If not enough chakra is used, then it can simply be used to squeeze the tenketsu. Both ways have similarly devastating results. But the style takes precise control and has very strict rules. It's meant to take out comparable shinobi to the user and those with average tenketsu. Naruto slid across the dirt to send his own heavy hand strike into Niji's body, his fingers sinking into his torso as the wind was knocked out of him. But what if the one you are using it on has too much chakra for you to stop the flow or even disturb it? Niji tumbled across the dirt a good distance away as Naruto continued to talk. What if the target's chakra is just simply too chaotic and dominating to even acknowledge or allow your chakra to enter their body? Niji slowly brought himself back up to his feet as he held his ribs, breathing hard. Or maybe my chakra points are just too big and hard to give a shit about your attacks. Gentle Fist also lacks the penetrating force for less powerful chakra to bypass the stronger chakra to block the points. So someone like me is immune to the Hyuga. What? Is this the direction fate choose? For him to face someone immune to what he had worked so hard to perfect? No, he had to be lying. Also, my style is a lot more deadly than the Hyuga's. I only struck you once, right? Niji looked at him confused as he didn't know what he was talking about until he held his stomach and ribs again and bit his lip so hard it bled. His clothing on his back was shred as some foreign chakra ripped through him and exploded out the back. I had a feeling that wouldn't kill you. How are you feeling? Naruto finally grew a sadistic grin across his face, showing that his teeth had gotten progressively sharper. Niji had no idea what happened. Turning his Byakugan in on his own body, what he saw matched what he felt. Only about 3 of his chakra points were even closed, but that wasn't the issue. Naruto had injected his own hazardous chakra instantly into Niji on contact. That chakra forced its way out through him and out his back, causing damage internally but also forcing his own chakra out of his body at the point of impact. The damage he took he could manage as well as the closed points. The biggest concern was that Naruto's attack actually made Niji lose a sizable amount of his chakra. You know, the previous times I used this on people, the results were a lot messier. It also hurt to use. Glad my control is worlds better. Wouldn't want to make Hinata-chan sad. Hinata-sama? Yes, the girl you tried to kill is the reason I'm not killing you. Would be too easy anyway. All I have to do is touch you. The Hyuga must have very flexible chakra points because of their training, or is that just you and Hinata? I haven't met many Hyuga personally, but most of you seem to fit a similar mold. The women though. Naruto gave the OK symbol with his hand showing his approval. Why should I care about any of that? It's dash. Because women are hot? Well, I guess most of them are your cousins, but hey? Hyuga like to keep it in the family anyway, and as I said, they are hot. Or are you not into girls? That would explain the pretty hair and scented shampoo. How much will you continue to talk? As long as you can't shut me up, I see not reason to. All I need to do is touch you and it's game over. The Hyuga are the strongest in the leaf. We are not so easily. Wow, that's the nicest thing I've heard you say about Hinata. Of course I wasn't talking about her. Naruto's grin died down and he pouted. Well, that's just rude. Why would I praise that failure? She is nothing but a weak link in the Hyuga, made worse by the fact that she is the heiress. If it weren't for her, I wouldn't have been born into the branch family, and my father would not have been. He held back his words to try and calm his anger. Ah, so that really is your reason for being a bitch. Hinata wants to save the branch family, and you want to smite your only hope? Personally, I want to see her succeed, and with the way you are now, if you aren't going to help her, then you are only in her way. Those words were more than enough warning for Niji as Naruto blurred towards him. Kaiten! Naruto's hand met a spinning dome of chakra as Niji rotated at high speeds. Naruto was surprised but pushed harder, which only caused him to be deflected back. He tilted his head as Niji slowed to a stop. His hand spasmed from making contact with the attack. To be self-taught and already know the ultimate technique of the Hyuga. Outstanding, you truly are the one that has inherited the most. Hayashi felt regret that Niji was not the one who had been the heir to the clan. If not for the elders, he would have been. Hanabi was amazed that her cousin was so gifted in her family's arts already. Niji felt reaffirmed of his eventual victory, seeing Naruto get blocked and damaged from his technique. This is a coveted art of the Hyuga, and with it I can deflect any attack and send jutsu right back at the user. Oh, that really is a good technique. Even without looking at it, I can tell that's not so simple. He reached up to his face and pushed up his headband until it was right above his eyes. The TVs in the area zoomed in on his face. His whisker marks were slightly broader, and his eyes seemed to shine like the beams of a lighthouse before the light died down and the features of the optical organs could be taken in. His eyes still appeared to be blue, but now grew lighter and brighter towards the center, appearing like a starburst, and seemed to almost pulse with energy. He already looked good before, but from his taller frame to his sharper jawline there was less he could get away with, as he looked even more like a lady killer. Older women were definitely looking at him now, and not because they thought he was cute anymore. Block this again for me. Naruto gathered chakra in his hand and sped towards Niji again. Niji rotated fiercely as he met Naruto's outstretched hand. The ground around them broke as Naruto pushed harder into Niji's protective dome. Naruto noted that the chakra on his hand was slowly blown off until finally he was cancelled and sent flying through the air. Niji was about to brag until he saw Naruto recover and land lightly on his feet, as if he had been expecting to injure his hand again. Said hand was now bleeding and twitching, but was quickly healing. Yes, that's a very good technique. I had to see it twice, and I mean actually see it with my eyes, to figure out its flaws. Niji felt his bones go a bit cold as Naruto sounded pretty confident in his words. What? That technique, from what I can tell, involves you rotating at his speed and expelling your chakra. Since you are a Hyuga, you are probably expelling chakra specifically from your tenketsus. Probably all of them, if not most. You use your outstretched arms to balance you as well as control the shape of the dome. It is the rotating chakra itself that acts as a barrier to deflect jutsu. Because of the fact you have to spin fast to make the technique effective, even with the fact you are constantly expelling chakra from every direction. If someone can run around you faster than you can spin, then your defense is virtually useless. Or they can simply move forward at a fast enough speed and with good enough aim that they can strike faster than your spin and hit your weak point. Hayashi's knuckles went white as Naruto jutsu continued to tear his family's techniques apart in public. Sure, they were not major flaws, as most people in the world would not even have the skills to be able to act on them even with the knowledge under their belt, but it was still knowledge that did not need to be known. Of course, it doesn't have to be a physical body that can move faster than your rotation. Naruto held out his hand as a white ball of spiraling chakra started to form into being. It whistled in the air as it formed into a tangible, spherical shape. Let's see how you hold up to this. There were gasps throughout the arena as the Rasengan was a famous jutsu of their beloved fourth Hokage. Even the ones who hated Naruto could not help but see the sudden resemblance, as they saw the image of the fourth over Naruto for a second, but they quickly shook the thought away, denying it. Hiruzen sat there amazed. He had been hoping that one day Naruto would be able to inherit the techniques of his parents and learn them, but he had never expected Naruto to start pulling off the Rasengan of all things so soon. The Raikage had his wide eyes on Naruto as he was personally familiar with that technique. The Kazekage and Mizukage were almost on the edge of their seats as they took in all that was before them. Such a talented boy and so young. That body of his, I can't wait to have it. The Mizukage had a smile on her face as she was impressed. The exams have only just begun and already this handsome young man has made the journey here more than worth it. Naruto leaped high into the air and shot his arm out at Niji. Ready for it, and his pride not allowing him to do anything other than prove his technique was better than Naruto's, he used his rotation once again. Kaiten! Rasengan! The two techniques met with a screech as a vortex was formed between the two, sucking in the air from the surrounding area. Niji's stamina was tested as the Hyuga in the audience witnessed the longest the technique ever lasted against their heavenly rotation, as it continued for a good 30 seconds until suddenly both attacks cancelled each other out. Niji had his confidence shattered as Naruto's attack proved itself equal to his supposedly perfect defense. He had to gasp for air as the clash had deprived him of it because of the vacuum. Seeing Naruto's arm had been knocked back but his body itself was still in range, Niji quickly started to rotate again. Kai dash! Nope. Naruto quickly formed another white but this time brighter Rasengan in his hand, and the next thing Niji knew, it was in his face. Naruto let go of it, causing his arm to recoil as if he had just shot a bomb. The ball of spiraling chakra quickly went unstable from lack of control and expanded as all Niji saw was light. A second later he was enveloped in a maelstrom of chakra as it exploded with twice the diameter of his rotation. Naruto landed on his feet and people just kept turning their heads. Not only could he use their 4th's famed technique, but he could use it just as fast. Niji laid on his back in a shallow crater as he twitched. He was parleyed from that attack. Naruto approached him with a stride to his step. I call that the Razendama. It's not really all that different from the regular Rasengan. I just use more of the undiluted chaotic chakra of my bloodline to create it, which makes it pretty destructive when I lose control of it like a bomb. You want to berate Hinata for being the weak link of the Hyuga and for things that were out of her control. But even what you see as a true Hyuga and you with all your talent, the Hyuga are not invincible. All it took was someone with the skills and power to get an advantage over your techniques, and you fell apart. And all you Hyuga are the same. You want to hate Hinata for being different when you should be encouraging her. Not jutsu because she is family, but it is because consistency is what becomes predictable, and it is the people who strive to be different from the norm that are the reason that humanity has even gotten this far. You want to bitch about your place in life or the branch family. For certain reasons that you don't need to know of, I know quite a bit about the branch family situation. Hinata actually wants to help out the branch, so you should be helping her. Naruto stood over him as Niji finally passed out, having not been able to breathe. Naruto pushed his headband back over his eyes and shrugged. Well, you can do whatever you want. Just know the next time you go against Hinata, I'm going to kill you. Winner Uzumaki Naruto. The applause he received was instant, but he was not surprised by the fact that most of the praise, not counting the women, were from people outside of his village. They were happy with the performance, as no one had been expecting a random to beat a Hyuga prodigy so easily and so spectacularly. Naruto didn't care though, as to him Niji had only really been a warm-up. The one who he truly wanted to fight had just now landed in front of him. Naruto smirked as he saw the bushy-browed taijutsu user. So we can finally have our rematch? Ready whenever you are, Lee. Naruto went into his fight stance, literally bouncing with excitement before Genma groaned out. Uzumaki, this isn't your match, get off the field. Naruto blinked for a moment before sweat dropping at him, getting ahead of himself. Right. As medics came and carried Niji off Naruto's side and turned to walk off the field. He could wait, for now he would just enjoy watching the others fight. Would Uchiha Sasuke please come down to the center so we can begin the second match? Chapter 14, Smashing, LOL. Would Uchiha Sasuke please come down to the center so we can begin the second match? Finally, the one who most people in Konoha had come to the exams to see. Not surprising since he was the last Uchiha. Realistically, there might be a few with Uchiha blood here and there sprinkling the ninja world, but those individuals, not counting Itachi, would be reaching at straws. So Sasuke was listed as the only Uchiha who mattered because he was the only loyal one. Because of this, he felt entitled to quite a bit, and had been spoiled. Noticing how everything had gone silent to hushed whispers, Naruto stopped and held his hand over his headband where his eyes were covered. After 20 seconds he sighed and let his hand drop as he turned back to Genma and shot. Hey, Sasuke isn't here. He's not even in the stadium. TCH. Genma bit down on his senbon in irritation. He looked up to the Kages to figure out how to go about the situation. A frown marred Hiruzen's face as the situation rolled. It was one thing to be a few minutes late, but Sasuke had already missed the roll call and the entire previous match. That could be overlooked if he showed up for his own match, but he hasn't even done that. No doubt other villages had come to see Uchiha, yet he had to keep a firm hand in front of the other Kage. He suddenly felt a chill go down his spine and looked back at the center of the arena to see Naruto glancing back at him with an eye visible. The gaze seemed to glow and pierce through him as Naruto mouthed a question to him. Are you going to give him special treatment? Hiruzen flinched at the question, getting the hidden meaning of Naruto's words. He sighed and steeled his nerve as he stood up. Since Uchiha Sasuke cannot show the decency to at least show up on time for his own match, he is disqualified. I apologize to those who came specifically to see him perform, but there must be equal treatment amongst my genin. We will move on to the next match. He ignored the boos from the stands as Genma nodded and called for the next fighters. Lee had tears going down his eyes, spouting about how unyouthful it was. He had really wanted to fight the Uchiha. No one could see it as Naruto turned back around, but his face went dark as a demonic grin spread over it. That was so easy. The next match will be between Niyujito of Kumo and Kankuro of Suna. Kankuro himself was in a good mood. He was going to be able to play with his puppets and show off, as well as face a hot girl. Yujito squinted at her opponent. Oh, you're the brother of the Sand Kun holder. Kankuro was snapped out of his thoughts as he flinched when that information had been brought out. Of course, many of the higher-ups from Konoha pretty much knew Gaara's true identity anyway now. After all, not many throughout history could use sand, and their origins all connect to the same point. How did you know he held that? It's not hard for other aware containers to find these things out. Other aware? Yujito blinked at his nervousness. Wait, did you not know there are more hosts than your brother? There are several here and I am one as well. I say this because it's not really a secret in my village, as a few other villages are aware of my existence. A dark blue flaming aura went up along her body for a second before fading. But yeah, I hold one as well. Don't worry, I'm not gonna dash. I forfeit. Yujito stumbled as most were surprised. Genma, having heard the conversation, couldn't blame the kid, but he could have still had some balls to, otherwise there was no point for him to come to the finals. It's like he was trying to conserve his strength, or something. Genma sighed as he waved off the boy, who sighed in relief as he quickly retreated. Yujito just stood there before grumbling and leaving the center as well. Kankuro made his way up the stairs, avoiding eye contact with most as he was a little embarrassed. The only ones who had heard the conversation amongst the fighters were the other containers and the Kages. Even if they had heard, it's not like most of the Konoha genie even knew what a Jinchuriki was. Naruto crossed his arms as he leaned against the rails when Kankuro passed. To give up so easily? I doubt she knew that the one in front of her was not the real body. You had a chance, so why didn't you take it? Naruto's eyes didn't have to be unblocked for Kankuro to feel his gaze piercing him. It made his spine chill as Naruto somehow knew that he was a puppet and his body was elsewhere. What made it worse was that Nara Kid was also glancing back at him in what might have been suspicion. Naruto snickered when Yujito passed by him. Shishishi, what did you think would happen when you told him you were what most people consider a demon? She glared at him, having not thought of her actions that much. How was I supposed to know? Everyone in my village knows my status, and except for a few instances I've mostly had no issues. Your village also has and has had more Jinchuriki than any other village in history. Stands to say they would naturally be more accepting than others, even with the random bigots. She hadn't thought about that but accepted it, and would keep note of that for the future. For hearing her name called gave the irritated Yujito a pat on the back before jumping over the rails and landing lightly before running to the center. Shortly after, Shino arrived as well. Genma, seeing that both fighters were ready, nodded. Alright, we will now start the third match between Fu of Kumo and Aburame Shino of Konoha. Hajime. Shino pushed up his glasses as he spoke behind his high collar. I do not know your abilities, but one should not prove much of a threat if they are rendered unable to fight. Fu tilted her head at him curiously. Between his hood and his high collar, and shades, not much of his face, or really his body period, was visible, and he spoke in an almost autonomous way. Her eyes widened a little and she whistled when he held out his arms and a swarm of insects spread out from his sleeves. You use bugs? The parasitic insects of my clan. Without another word he sent them on her. She was surrounded, blocking off her exits before they closed in on her. Onlookers were expecting a quick end as the girl was hidden from view in a sphere of bugs. This kind of luck is no fun. Shino twitched as she smiled all the while. The collection of insects started to shimmer and expand. Shino held up his hands and flared his chakra to have them compress back on the girl. The insects didn't even appear to react as they continued to fall to the ground and land. Shino didn't know what to make of it as all the bugs fell away and he saw Fu. Her eyes shined brighter, and she now sported a small pair of antennae made of chakra on her head. Sorry, but insects of this level. If you are going to use them against me, you might as well use nothing at all. Shino tried to raise his insects off the ground, but they refused to obey, as if under the authority of someone else. What a queen! But I have several queens inside me. He tried to use them this time to order the insects, but he bulked over to his knees and held his body in pain. How can this be? My own queens are acknowledging her as their queen? That wasn't how things were supposed to work. It was illogical. Queens did not bend to other queens. It was as if... True queen. He froze when 2 feet stepped to the ground in front of him. He looked up to see Fu looking down at him. Her face was shadowed as her eyes pierced his being, and her ever-present smile made her look very malicious. She lifted up a foot and positioned it right over his face. What she was about to do was no secret, and so he swallowed the lump in his throat and bowed to the ground. I concede. There were some cheers, but for the most part people were confused. Many just assumed she used some jutsu to render his bugs useless, but it was more than that. Naruto facepalmed, though he was not surprised by the outcome. He just wished she fought him straight up and didn't just psychologically castrate the guy. Sure, she didn't say much to do it, but she was one of the few on the planet that his clan was completely useless. The host of the Insect Queen, he supposed, would also be considered an Insect Queen, or Princess, or whatever. Yujito giggled at Naruto's exasperation. I guess even creatures that rely simply on instincts and baser thoughts recognize authority better than others. Fu shined to appear next to them to give them a peace sign. Yes, that was an easy one. Shut up, Bug Eyes. Naruto snorted but didn't look in her direction, though he was still blindfolded. She flinched before her cheeks puffed out. You can't even see me. Let's start the next match between Naruto Shikamaru of Konoha and Temari of Suna. It was during this fight that Naruto thought how bad it could be to hyper-focus your skills as many of his generation did. The only ones who didn't were Sasuke, who had skills in multiple areas, and Lee, who didn't have much of a choice but trained himself to more than make up for it. Naruto lifted his headband above one eye just so that he could lazily see the match visibly. Gaara-san stirred irritatedly about in the air around him, making Kankuro sweat. It was as if the air around Naruto became progressively more ominous with each minute that passed. Yujito and Fu also felt anxious as they would constantly glance over at Naruto ever so often, their bijou also resonating oddly with whatever Naruto was doing. He looked up to the side to see the Kage box and saw the Kazekage. Why is he hiding his appearance? It's not like it's a secret. He narrowed his eyes and did a sort of looking in with his senses. Wait, that's not a real body. But then who dash dot? The Kazekage looked down to meet his eyes, and Naruto shivered as he got a familiar feeling and his pupils slitted. Oh, so it's you. he whispered excitedly. The Kage must have read his lips as their own eyes narrowed at him almost in an amused way. He figured that Snake would act soon anyway, so choose to keep silent lest that cause things to go worse. If he knew, then Danzo and maybe even that old man knew already as well. He felt something odd and looked over to the Kage in blue. "Oh, a Mizukage is here, hot damn." As if feeling new eyes on her, she looked at him as well, and I smiled as she waved. He looked away quickly to look back at the match. There was a poof above his head as Kuromi nuzzled in his hair. "Are you shy around older women?" "Well, I'm not shy around you, and you're the oldest dash." He stopped as her claws started to dig into his skull. "You can finish that sentence if you want. I won't do anything." He sweated a bit. "Is that a promise?" She didn't answer, making him sweat more. "'Kay, Kuromi?" "Oh, look, the match is over." She spoke out in an unusually cheery way. He looked back at the field to see Shikamura had surrendered. Well, he tried his best. His tactical mind should be good enough to get him Chunin, but he could have one if he were just a little better or had a wider skill set. Maybe he's just weak towards older women. "Okay, I'm sorry. Please don't make this a thing." She didn't respond, making his eye twitch. "The next match will be Samui of Kumo versus Gaara of Suna." Samui sighed before raising her hand. "I forfeit my match. Facing him I feel would be very uncool." Ginma blinked at that before shrugging. Gaara was annoyed but said nothing, as that would just let him get to better prey faster. Fu and Yujito looked over at their fellow kunoichi sympathetically as Naruto rose an eyebrow. Yujito saw his expression and leaned over. "She uses swords. She's also not blind." Naruto got the hint in the second part, meaning that she at least suspected Gaara's status if she wasn't already certain. Very perceptive if she did. A sword against sand would not turn out very well if she can't get past his defense. We will now start the next phase. Uzumaki Naruto vs. Rock Lee, both from Konoha. Yash! Lee jumped down as he made his way to the center. Naruto shined to the center, not wasting any time. Ginma called the match and they both went into their fighting stances, Naruto not having his hands in his pockets right from the beginning, this time showing he was taking it seriously. "Sorry Lee, my match after this one will be the biggest, so I have to end this fast." He spoke softly so Lee wouldn't hear him. They both took off quickly, surprising many as dust was left behind them. There was a swirl of leaves in the center, causing their eyes to widen as they both skidded to a stop a few meters away. Two shinobi appeared and Naruto actually gained a headache. Kakashi stood there with Sasuke in what they thought was a cool interest. Sasuke wearing all black with an odd arrangement of white bindings on his arm. He had grown as well but noted that Naruto was still taller by just as much. He paused when he saw the headband over his eyes before ignoring it. "Dope, get off the field, it's time for my match." "Fuck no. Your match already passed. Since you weren't here you were disqualified." He started to laugh at Sasuke's look of dumb surprise. "What did you think, just because you were an Uchiha that you could purposefully show up late and no one would bat an eye? Not when you're this late, duck, as the finals are halfway over." Kakashi was embarrassed a bit but figured this would happen. Sasuke would not stop wasting time looking for clothes. If he of all people feels like he should be on time to something, then you know it's bad. Sasuke balled his fists as he stormed over to Naruto. "Dope, back off from your match so I can have mine. People came here to see an Uchiha, not whatever you are." Naruto tilted his head and Sasuke found it awkward figuring out what to stare at on his face with his eyes covered. "Okay, first of all, I'm pretty sure that's not allowed at this point, and secondly, even if it was, I'd have to give you a nah on that." He stuck his tongue out at Sasuke, causing him to turn red with anger. "You will dash. You don't order me around." Sasuke's eyes widened as Naruto vanished. His Sharingan activated on reflex, showing they had fully matured. His eyes shifted to the side to catch Naruto, who had lifted his headband above one eye to see his face. His eyes widened at what he saw, but Naruto cut him off before he could ask. In a quick instance, using his surprise, Naruto grabbed Sasuke's face, covering his eyes. Sasuke recovered and knocked his hand away, growling, "Don't touch me. I'm going to." He looked confused as Naruto held up 3 fingers and counted down to 1. "What are you, dash?" There was an explosion of air from Sasuke's back, sending him rocketing forward. Naruto stepped out of the way as he sailed past it. He tumbled on the ground before righting himself up. He was confused as to what happened. Sasuke was about to step forward, but then there was another small explosion, this time of electricity, as he seized up his muscles, growing paralyzed, and he fell forward. He was still conscious but couldn't do shit. Naruto snickered as he held up one paper tag in each hand. You like them? They are my own creations. One is a wind-based explosion tag and the other is lightning. Great for positioning and capturing targets. Of course, with enough, just either tag can be used to aid in the killing of the target. He turned to the crowds and held out his hands. And I have more than that. To the shops of Konoha and its allies, you too can acquire these surprisingly simple yet useful seals to market and sell with just a simple contract with me, Uzumaki Naruto. The Mizukage giggled softly into her hand as some of the men's sweat dropped. So young, and yet he can both use and create his own seals? I suppose his clan name being Uzumaki holds a great deal of truth. I had thought they died out. I grunted in agreement, having only met a few Uzumaki in his lifetime, with the most prevalent one having brought him to a draw and was connected to the one man to ever outpace him. A slim blond man. His eyes narrowed as he looked at Naruto's hair and the chain around his neck. Still, though, with his seals, if he truly has a talent for it, he could be a useful resource to my village. From the rumors and markings on his face, I believe he is this village's Jinchuriki. He may find himself more at home at mine. The man stroked his small goatee as he thought how he would spin such a deal. Hiruzen facebombed in dismay at the boy actually using the exams as a stand to self-advertise. Kakashi just gets Sasuke off the field. He was disqualified and is in no condition to fight anyway. Kakashi scratched his head but nodded anyway, having expected that, though he had been surprised to see Naruto whip out variations of existing seals. Lee stared at the scene but shook his head, going back into his stance. I have regrets to not being able to fight Sasuke-kun, but it is unyouthful to not obey rules. Let us have a youthful match, Naruto-kun. Naruto smirked, having gotten used to Lee's oddness, and looked over to Genma, who nodded. You may continue. The moment he said that, Naruto vanished from his spot in a burst of wind. Onlookers were surprised at the boy's speed. Lee ducked as a wide kick went where his head had been from behind. Naruto positioned himself back around and brought down an axe kick on Lee. The green-clad genin jumped out of the way as the ground where he had been spread out with spiderweb cracks. I see you are giving me your best, Naruto-kun. Let me return the favor. Lee dashed straight at Naruto faster than once again most could track. Naruto gave a fanged smirk which Lee caught as his hand crackled in the air. Lee skidded to a stop, just barely avoiding the sweeping hand as sparks danced through the air. You're off balance. Naruto continued his momentum and turned back around, sending a double palm strike into Lee's core. He was sent back but landed on his feet. Lee held his body before sparks flew out of him before fizzling out into the air. I feel as if I am filled with a sense of unease. Naruto rose an eyebrow at that. That's supposed to force your chakra out of your body to damage it. I even put more of my own chakra into it for it to work, taking into mind you don't have much chakra. Is it because his coils are undeveloped or because of how durable he is? Probably a combination of both. Well, it doesn't matter. I will not go down so easily, Naruto-kun. Only those seeing the back of Lee saw a seal glow into existence on his back for a moment before it went off. I had already suspected that. A wind explosion identical to the one on Sasuke went off on Lee, sending him flying forward. Wah! Naruto smoothly caught him by his throat before slamming him into the ground. Sorry, but I have to end this quickly. The next seal activated on Lee, the electric one this time. His body locked up as Naruto relaxed. It only lasted a second, however, as he grunted in determination and started to shrug it off. If they were visible, one would see Naruto's eyes widen in disbelief. How tough is your body? Only a well-trained jonin or a Jinchuriki should be able to shrug this off this fast. It told you. I will not go down so easily. Lee started straining but was slowly forcing Naruto's hand off of him as wind began to rise from his chakra, agitating and becoming visible. First gate open. He recovered completely and putting Naruto in a bad spot as Naruto was having to use too much of his strength to hold him down. Shit! Second gate open. The wind increased as he sweated. I was hoping it wouldn't get to this point. Third gate. Open. Lee's skin started to turn red as his body heated up. But I already planned for this. Naruto's own hair flared out wildly and the chain around his neck cracked heavily. Naruto's fear died and everything went disturbingly calm as he rose his headband up so he could look at his eye, making Lee's whitening eyes widen. I've made contact with your body for too long, and you have too much active chakra now. He forced his hand past Lee's grip to grab his face and press it into the ground. Shindoten, Sadaina Nami, Pulsation release, grand pulse. All volume died as a breeze went by. Even the faintest of one's breathing could be heard by the person next to them. A split second later the field was heavily damaged as cracks went out everywhere in a 50-meter range. People's eyes widened out comically, even the Raikage at that one attack. That looks worse than my iron claw. The longer he comes into contact with an enemy, the more time he has to fill them with his hazardous chakra. Afterwards, if it is allowed to build, then he can simply use it to all rush at once to an amplified physical strike. Genma rushed to lead to check him over as his body was impacted in the ground. His eyes had faded and he wasn't moving. Genma glared lightly over at Naruto, who waved him off. It looks worse than it is. He likely won't be able to fight for a while, but he should be conscious soon. With how long I had contact with him, I could have done some permanent damage, but I want to have a fair fight with him when I'm not in a rush. Are you serious? Naruto's mind was blown as Lee pulled himself out the ground and stood up ready to fight again. Naruto started to grit his teeth, his fangs sharpening, as he didn't want to have to go this far. He paused and looked at Lee again and let out a breath. He was standing, but the light in his eyes was gone. Genma was surprised as Guy jumped down to him. With just willpower alone he pushed through. He's just like me. Naruto truly smiled at that as Guy hoisted Lee over his shoulder. His skeleton had been cracked and he had a head injury, but a few weeks of healing and he would be good as new. Guy huffed before turning to Naruto and giving him a thumbs up. I hope you will continue to challenge Lee and have another youthful match in the future. I'll fight him whenever he is ready. A few ninja of the maintenance corps came down to fix the cracks in the arena with water and earth jutsu. Winner of the semi-finals, Uzumaki Naruto. There were more cheers now, more this time from the actual village, though there were many who were afraid of him. Good they should be. This isn't even fair. Shikamaru didn't know what to think about what he just saw. Naruto not only had more power than a genin, but he kept bringing out new things from his arsenal. It was too troublesome to not think about. The next match will be Yujito versus Shikamaru. Will both fighters please dash? Yeah, I forfeit. Shikamaru raised his hand, not even giving them a chance. I don't have much chakra and most of my tricks have already been seen. That, and it would be too troublesome to fight someone with a bijou inside them. Fu laughed at Yujito's dismay while Naruto's eye twitched. I just realized, because of how many fighters there are and how many forfeits there have been, that I'm likely the one who is going to fight the most matches. Kuromi appeared on his shoulder again. But you like to fight though, right? Well, yeah, but there are only containers left now, so all of us will probably fight each other next. A ninja dropped down to hand Genma a scroll, to his confusion. He opened it and read it over, gaining an expression of disbelief before looking up at the Hokage. Hiruzen frowned but looked over at Naruto just to make sure. Naruto caught the look and shrugged before nodding. The old man sighed. Well, Danzo's idea was not a bad one. He nodded down to Genma, who was surprised, thinking that it might have been a joke. He coughed into his hand awkwardly before calling out. The finals of the exams will be a 4-man free-for-all between the 4 Jinchuriki Gaara of Suna, Fu and Yujito of Kumo, and Uzumaki Naruto of Konoha. A pen drop could be heard as the stadium became unnaturally. Older generations couldn't believe their ears. Did the Hokage just decided to randomly drop the "you shall not speak of it" rule? The Raikage gave a boisterous laugh as he pounded his fist. Looks like B was right, the boy is a container. A match with 4 different containers doing battle? Now this was worth the trip. Mei blinked in surprise as she leaned forward and looked at the 2 female Jinchuriki before looking back at Naruto. Oh, so he's a host too? Naruto's grip had tightened on the rails to the point they bent as his teeth sharpened. No one noticed that Lee had returned with the help of Guy lending his shoulder and bandages covering much of his body, but he also heard the news. The genin who were not in the matches were still close enough to where they could walk up to the others. Ino made her way to them along with the rest of their generation with Hinata. Wait, what's a Jinchuriki? Is that some kind of term for underdogs? Well, it wasn't an insult. Naruto turned his head to them, making them jump at the demonic grin. Well, you're not wrong. But to be specific, a Jinchuriki is someone who was used as a child sacrifice to seal a tailed beast. They are the hosts of beings that are seen as demons of mass destruction. Shikamaru didn't seem all that surprised as he spoke up over the others. You contain the 9-tailed fox, don't you, Naruto? It is the only bijou to attack the village, and those things can't be killed, so the 4th must have died in the effort to seal it. You are too smart for your own good. Naruto snickered as he backflipped high off the rails. He landed on his feet and hit the ground hard as it cracked lightly. Yujito and Fu were already there and Gaara appeared right after them in a shunshin of sand. Ginma got the hell out of there after he gave the signal for them to start. They all moved back except Naruto, who cracked his hands. Play War Cry by Hiroyuki Sawano. I guess I should officially introduce myself now. I am Uzumaki Naruto, son of Uzumaki Kushina and the Yandame Hokage Namikaze Minato. Hiruzen's breath hitched, not knowing that Naruto already knew that. Did Jiraiya tell him? He looked over at the other Kages to see the Reikage and Mizukage flinched at the names. Jinchuriki are glorified weapons of their villages and testaments of their military might. As I hold the strongest being Kyuubi, I am the ultimate weapon here, but I got this far without hardly ever using her. Most missed the fact that Naruto specified the gender. Naruto stopped speaking when his arm was covered in sand. He flexed his chakra and it was blown off. He looked over at Gaara annoyed. Hey, I was still talking. So? Gaara waved his hand as a blast of sand went at Naruto. He did a series of back handsprings to move out of the way. That's pretty rude. He tilted his head as his sense went off and quickly turned around to grab Fu by her head, who had dived for him. You-oh! What kind of attack was that supposed to be? There was a blur behind him and Naruto swung out his hand to grab her wrist, stopping the sword in her hand from reaching him. Yujito was surprised to be blocked so easily. He's not even looking at them. Are you all aiming for me? She gained a small smile as Fu nodded. Well, let's face it, you are the most interesting one here. That's true. The way he responded annoyed her as the fingernails of her other hand sharpened in claws, and she slashed at him again. He kicked up, blocking her hand with his foot. She dropped the sword out of her higher hand and grabbed it with her mouth. WH-. He was stunned when Fu suddenly sprayed out some orange shiny dust from her mouth. It was like a signal scrambler as his sense became extremely hazy. Shit! Yujito smirked with the sword between her lips as lightning chakra danced along it. She slashed up as he managed to still lean back out of the way. It sliced cleanly through his headband and had the effect of the sparks igniting the dust. He let go of both of them on reflex as he was consumed in a small explosion. They jumped back to see the results. There was a small smoking spot where he stood that quickly dispersed as the sound of metal hitting the ground could be heard when his headband fell away. You guys are pretty dangerous. He was standing straight up unharmed, albeit with his top singed with his head turned to the sky. Slowly he brought his face down, and they all blushed as he finally opened his eyes. I guess it's just a wave of secrets being revealed today for me. His eyes had now fully changed. For just a moment they were the starburst blues from before, but just as quickly as they had came they were gone and replaced with brilliant shades of orange, from a gold orange throughout it to a warm red around the edges. His eyes were a perfect match for a sunset. His pupils were less visible, but they were still there as they slowly became glowing slits. Up in the stands, Jiraiya, who had been hiding, gained a serious look. So he brought those out. Lee pointed out and shouted, causing him to finally be noticed. Those eyes. I saw those for a second when he fought me. He winced in pain a second later, having moved too quickly. Sasuke was seeing red, and not just because his Sharingan was activated. He could finally move again, and seeing his loser teammate also have possibly a dojutsu pissed him off. Now I know what you're thinking. What kind of badass is this? Well, it's the same kind of badass as always. It's just the current high of my pulsation bloodline. See, over the past month one of the things I trained in was my unique bloodline in hopes of gaining control of it. So I meditated and trained, and eventually with my area of effect sixth sense I was able to feel everything around me in greater detail. But I went further until not only could I start to feel the energy around me, I started being able to draw in the very energy of nature itself. What? Jiraiya and Hiruzen jumped out of their seats, as well as the Kazekage. Hiruzen looked at the Kazekage, who coughed awkwardly before returning to their seat. Jiraiya balled his fists, not believing it. If what the boy said was true, then did he unlock Sage Mode already? Or was Sage Mode a part of his unique bloodline? When my eyes are like this, my body is harder, allowing me to use my chakra without backlash, and I can better use my bloodline as well. Naruto ripped off his shirt, showing his body so firmly toned you could break a blade on it. Women around gained nosebleeds. The Mizukage kept giggling, making the Reikage and Hokage and the guards look at her oddly. The Kazekage started giggling as well, making them pale. Fu and Yujito took a step back, seeing him all exposed and feeling hot for a moment before they regained their nerve. Naruto held out his hands as light shocks ran over his body, but the chain around his neck was still present. Basically, when I'm like this, I can truly use all the skills I have available to me. Fu ran at him in a blur happily. I don't know what all that means, but Fu just wants to fight. You're kind of touched in the head, aren't you? Naruto turned out of the way as she flew by. I'm not crazy. Really? Okay, but I still touched your head for a good bit of time. He held up one hand as Fu's eyes widened a bit fearfully. You please dash. Nah. He closed his hand and an explosion went off the top of her head. The force of it sending her head into the ground and giving it a small crater. Fu! Yujito screamed as she appeared behind Naruto. He leaned forward, dodging her claws, and Neil kicked at her. Crossing her arms, she blocked the stomp but reeled as she was knocked away. He stepped towards her, but then retreated back as a wave of sand went by in front of him. He looked over at Gaara, who had an expressionless face. He turned his hand and the sand started to funnel around Naruto. When it closed in on him, Naruto shot up in the air, avoiding it. He gained a good amount of air as his sense went off again, and he looked to the side and saw Yujito forming hand signs before spiting out a blue mouse-shaped flame. He blinked at it as it moved very slow. After a few meters, it suddenly split into many, and one of his eyes squinted into some kind of irritation. He waited until right when they were within range as he took in a deep breath. Play Thunderbolt Fantasy by Hiroyuki Sawano. Time to defy logic. A shockwave left his mouth, blowing away the flaming rodents. The exact moment he opened his mouth, Naruto gained a quick burst of dizziness, as if one were trying to look in two directions at the same time. He was barely able to turn his head fast enough to see Fu spinning through the air. Wings had emerged from her back as she flew at him and sent the back of her heel at him. The blow connected with his shoulder, as he was surprised how similar that was to the move he used to finish Kiba. He also was not expecting the force behind it as he was sent rocketing to the ground. At the very last second, he managed to land on his feet, cratering the ground, and rolled his shoulder. How are you still conscious? At that moment, a pair of antennae sprouted from her head and an orange glow went over her body of a faint, invisible shell of energy over her body. Many insects have exoskeletons, and I hold the armored beetle. He nodded. Then I should hold back less. As he was distracted, Yujito used her cat-like stealth to approach his neck from behind. She brought her sword out again, only for a blur of moment to occur. Naruto's arm turned black and he swung it at her, causing a giant butcher blade to fly out of it, taking all the blackness with it, and hit her. She managed to block it with her sword but was knocked back from the weight behind the blade. Just because I'm not looking at you doesn't mean I can't see you. Mei was having flashbacks as the sword he carried very much resembled the weapon of a colleague of hers. He stepped forward and held up the blade high to the sky. He stumbled a bit when he couldn't move his feet, seeing that they were covered in sand. Damn. Fu flew over him and dusted him, making him close his eyes, and it scrambled the vibrations around him. That was the opening they needed as Yujito went through a fury of seals before opening her mouth, and a tidal wave of blue flames raced at him. He tried to force his way out of the sand but noted it had gone further up his legs. He watched the wave of hell come at him, and at the last moment smirked. The ground was scorched, and his body set ablaze before it went up in a burst of sound. A clone? Yes, kitten. Her ear went red as a hot voice spoke into her ear. Before she could look back, an arm went around her neck as Naruto leaned into her and held her in a headlock, her feet starting to float above the ground. And nay. He grinned evilly as she squirmed. He flexed and her eyes widened as a tremor went through her body, and she felt her spine tingle. She had to admit it felt kind of good, but then the next second visible lightning engulfed them in a white shine as Naruto electrocuted her. Kya! Yugi ne! Fu flew up and dive-bombed him. He quickly dropped Yujito, who dropped to her knees and jumped at Fu. She squeaked, not expecting him to come at her. He grabbed hold of her face and spun around before threw her forward into the ground hard as she cracked it. The moment he touched down, he sprinted forward. Fu shook her head as she had been dazed by the throw, but her armor shell protected her. Naruto blurred by her, and she looked at him confused, only to squeal when a chain suddenly wrapped itself around her midsection. Ha! He dragged her barbarically across the field as his chain sprouted from his backside like a tail. The chain swung her across the field and she hit the wall hard. She winced as the wall was damaged, but her armor held strong. Naruto didn't stay still anymore as he ran to the side. Missiles of sand came flying at him behind and looked to his left, seeing Gaara once again orchestrating from the side. Naruto leaned forward and vanished, causing the sand to crash into the ground, hitting nothing. Gaara's eyes darted around to find his prey, only to hear a low boom behind him. His sand had been fast enough to block Naruto at the back as he threw a flying knee at him. He touched down and gave a hard punch to the automatic defense. The sand hardened to block him, but Gaara grew nervous after feeling the wind from the strike. Naruto swung out both hands as they glowed with white chakra and unleashed a fury of blows at Gaara. The more he struck, the more the sand had time to build up and form a harder defense, as the ground broke up under them. After 10 seconds he stopped and whistled as a heavily cracked wall of compacted sand held in place while smoking. Naruto's chain shot out behind him to retrieve his sword from the rough grounds. Gaara acted and thrusted out his hands, dispersing the walls back into rocks and sand, and sent them at Naruto. "You know I can make anything I touch a bomb." He clenched his hand and over 50 micro-explosions went through Gaara's sand, blowing it apart and dispersing it. His sword whipped through the air as it was reeled in and caught by his hand. He did a wide horizontal slash into Gaara, which was met with another hastily reformed wall of sand. Naruto stepped forward and brought his other hand to the hilt and tightened his grip. Sparks ran through the blade as it started to glow white, and with a twist forward he sliced clean through it and hit Gaara. The red-headed boy looked in disbelief as his stomach was cut, and he flew back from the force of it as his blood was spilled. He detected movement, and quickly turned to his right to chuck his sword. "Jaya!" Fu cried out as the blunt end of the sword hit her in the forehead. Her shell held up but rippled at the impact. As she held her face and winced, she managed to catch Naruto appearing in front of her with his hand out, clawing the air as it glowed orange. Before she could move, his hand was thrust into her core, as she heaved, having the wind knocked out of her. He made a grabbing motion, and her body felt cold as he ripped the transparent layer of her armor clean from her body. Before she could fall to the ground, she gagged as a hand roughly grabbed her by her neck and held her up. Jigak. Yujito watched on and cursed at how he was basically playing with them. He wasn't giving them much opportunity to fight together and overwhelm him, and he would only move on to the next target when the previous one was hindered. She twitched her arm as she shrugged off the small stings of the paralysis. "I have a way that can stop him, but first I need an opening and I need to save F." Fu's head met her face. He had the audacity to throw the bug girl like a projectile at her teammate. He put his hands in his pockets and another Naruto appeared above the tangled girls. This one had glowing eyes that seemed to leak white chakra, showing that it was an unstable clone. It held up its hands and a white Rasengan grew in each. Once they were perfectly formed, he tried to crush them in his grip, compressing his own chakra in on them. Cracks appeared in the air around his hands before finally the jutsu overloaded and they were engulfed in a wide explosion. Naruto held out his arm, amused as there was a red puff of smoke next to him. "Ah, how long are you going to keep playing with them?" Naruto, seeing the bombshell red vixen reveal herself, caused many to forget to hold up their jaws. Many completely forgot she was the QB at first, even with the tail waving about, as they instantly cursed Naruto. He wrapped his arm around her waist and pulled her in. He leaned in and gave her a bold, deep kiss, which she giggled into, enjoying the baffled reactions of those around them. Some blushed as it was clearly an adult kiss. Their tongues tangled with each other for a few seconds before they parted, with the telltale strand of saliva connecting their tongues. "Well, I wouldn't be playing around if they weren't so easy. Well, I am the strongest of my siblings. It makes sense that if their containers are the same age as you, that they would be weaker. Nei-sama, you can manifest yourself at will?" She blinked at the voice. They looked to see Yujito clawing her way to her feet. Her hair frayed a bit wildly and one of her eyes had turned hazel with a fine cat-like slit. "Oh, you possess your host?" "Yes, I can come and go as I please. Of course, this is thanks to my beloved container. I'm sure he could help you gain some semblance of freedom as well." The Nico-possessed girl looked over at him curiously, to which he responded with a shrug, not really saying yes or no. Kuromi looked over at Yujito and squinted. "Wait, what happened to Bug Child?" Naruto leaned his head out of the way boredly as a fist hit the air where it had been. "She's right here." Kuromi jumped away and dispersed into chakra, vanishing. Naruto grabbed the arm and swung her down into the ground. Fu twisted and caught her feet on the ground before giving him a rising uppercut. He leaned back, narrowly missing it as his eyebrows rose a small bit. "Better." She stood back up into a stance with her hands out, and the backs of her hands turned away from her. His eyes now widened in surprise. "That's my stance." He buckled as her knuckles hit him in his rib cage. She had a wild smile on her face now as she aimed for his eyes. He smacked the hand out of the way, and she went for his neck. He deflected that, and she went on a few of increasingly accurate strikes. I've touched your hands enough. Nope. She now grinned as with a pulse of Yukai she cancelled his chakra out of his arms. What? She had learned to counter his attack. She spun around into the air and gave him a backhand to the face that sent him back. He didn't let himself fall, however, as he fought back the force, and he growled. He vanished from in front of her and appeared behind to give a hard chop to the back of her neck. Gack! As she was stunned, he placed a hand to her spine. Base. There was an instantaneous shockwave from his palm that blew her away. However, she didn't go nearly as far as he had hoped as she dug her feet into the ground, stopping herself, and did a complete 180 to cover the distance in a blink of an eye, and headbutt him in the face. MMRGHHH. He held his nose as it bled, and her thick skull rattled his brain. He blearily opened his eyes and saw the bug-eyed girl staring blankly at him with a smug grin. A pair of wings and a small tail came from her backside, as well as a pair of antennae longer than before, as the air seemed to shimmer and sparkle around her. You are fun to fight. But as time goes on, they will learn how to fight you better, and I will only get better as I learn your tricks. He felt footsteps behind him and glanced back to see Yujito walking gracefully towards them, having already completely recovered, as her dark eyes had lightened to emerald greens with cat-like pupils. Her canines were more pronounced, and she had a large flaming blue cat tail behind her and a pair of ears on top of her head made of fire to match. This is actually an exotic kind of sexy. Tho is a prodigy that learns her opponent's styles and techniques after only seeing them a few times and adds them to her arsenal. Me, on the other hand, if I can't beat my opponent quickly, I hold out, and buy my time as I learn their capabilities. You've been tossing us around, but for Jinchuriki like us it might as well be a play date, because we can heal from this kind of damage pretty easily if you don't knock us out. Honestly, you used a lot more power when you finished off that Lee guy earlier. Can you not do that again? Seems I messed around too much then. What can I say? I like at least giving the ladies a bit of foreplay before I really get going. And mother blood. They looked at each other before looking across the field to see Gaara holding his bleeding stomach as sand started to climb over his body. Yujito gave an inquisitive glance at the wound. His bijou should have healed him by now. Ichibi was never the most stable or agreeable of us. That probably has something to do with it. Gaara finally rose up as his arm had become a monstrous collection of misshaped sand. Gra, it's your blood. Your blood is what I need to satisfy my existence. Naruto snapped his nose back into place and blew some blood out as it healed and hit the side of his head a few times. You know, I actually did forget he existed before he got all dramatic. Gra. Yeah. Do you want my help now, Naruto? 3 containers you are up against. One of them is going berserk, and the other 2 seem to be quite capable. Not quite yet. I still have a trump card to play, and I have even been giving it my all yet. His hair grew wilder and his orange eyes started to flash out into a white glow as he fingered the chain around his neck and started to tug on it hard. Cracks started to appear on it as he pulled harder. So why don't I just skip that and go beyond my all? There was an explosion in the Kage stands and feathers started to rain down. The other host except Gaara noticed as well, and so Naruto relaxed his grip. It was at this moment he had to choose whether to continue the match, and whether or not his real opponents were in front of him, or was he needed elsewhere. Chapter 15, Release Beast. Panic ran out as there was an explosion in the Kage stands. Nearby ninja moved to help, only to be forced back by the sudden appearance of attacking Otonin. Feathers started falling from the sky as Naruto quickly recognized it as a genjutsu. So that was that snake bitch's plan? An invasion, huh? Having everyone awake will only make it harder on her then. Let's go. He closed his eyes and formed a ram sign. His chakra became visible on him and translucent. After a good 10 seconds of him calming himself, his eyes snapped open as his vibrant orange eyes glowed brilliantly, and a white pulse went out harmlessly over most of the stadium, destroying the genjutsu and waking most up. There were enough awoken to wake up those who were out of the range of his pulse. He gasped a bit as his stunning orange eyes faded back into brilliant starburst blues. I'm tapped out of that mode. Kankuro and Temari dropped down to Gaara, trying their best to brave against his enraged state as they grabbed him and quickly shined out of the arena. He wasn't sure whether to go after him or go up where Yamada was and settle the score. Shikamaru and many of the others dropped down around Naruto, as Otonin also dropped down looking ready to fight. Man, this is a drag. So the sand betrayed us? Naruto nodded as he mostly ignored the presence of the sound nin. Yeah, though probably misguided. That's not even their actual Kazekage but Yamada the Snake Princess. How do you know that? Shikamaru narrowed his eyes suspiciously as Naruto played it off while putting on a replacement orange shirt. Hey, I'm a man with a number of senses. So I was able to smell Yamada in the area and used my bloodline sense to figure out that the Kazekage was her after my gut telling me something wasn't right. I figured if I was able to figure it out that fast, the Hokage probably already knew. He lied, he just wanted to see how things would progress, but the answer was smooth enough for Shikamaru. There was a boom that rang out amidst all the noise of people scrambling to shelter, and a giant multi-head snake summon could be seen in the distance rampaging in the village. Man, this is a mess. Don't worry about that, I'll handle it. Shikamaru, you Hinata, Sasuke and whoever else wants to go with them go after Gaara. If they are planning to do what I think they are, then you guys need to stall them as long as possible. I'll send help as soon as I can. Hinata nodded, having recovered enough to be of help. Sasuke didn't say anything as this way he got to fight a worthy opponent. The others were unsure of how to act around Naruto after the Jinchuriki reveal but decided to follow the orders of the most able in their class for now as they scattered. Naruto crossed his fingers and created a mass of clones to fight the sound nin efficiently as the genin escaped. After his jutsu went off, he stopped and looked towards Yujito and Fu, who seemed to just be watching everything go down. I'd really appreciate it if you guys help out. Your Reikage is also trapped inside that barrier, you know. Yujito looked up and saw Be easily decimating the Oto nin around him along with the Reikage guards as they defended themselves. Well, I guess we'll help as we are needed. But we will settle this fight in the future. Naruto turned away from them and smirked. Oh, I'd love to take you both on any day. Naruto's hands went in the tiger seal for a second before they started speeding up at an insane pace, making a blur of various signs. Red yokai started leaving trails behind his hands before he stopped on the 99th seal. Ready, Kuromi? If you're sure, then I am with you, my container. Naruto held an expanding ball of red energy and threw it into the sky. It soared past the stands as it continued to expand before it exploded in a red flash. Woohoo! Kuromi roared dramatically as she came into view as the one everyone feared, the nine-tailed fox, with the changes being her red fur and black paws. The chain still hung around her neck, having grown to match her change in size. Trees were toppled over and clouds parted from her roar, though she was a little smaller than many remembered. No fucking way. Shikamaru and the others stopped in the woods as they saw the Kyuubi herself out in the open. Was this his plan? It seemed to be so, as the giant fox took off straight for the snake summon, who, while the same size as her, still looked scared now. Is the fox free? Kurenai panicked a little as her and her fellow jonins continued to fight the sound and sand nin. Naruto is still down there alive. I'm sure this is his doing, so until proven otherwise, tell as many jonin and chunin as you can to not attack that biju. Guy and Asuma nodded to Kakashi as they had to have faith this time. They didn't know what to make of the situation, and even if the fox was against them, they couldn't do anything about it right now with their Kage still trapped. Dark bags formed under Naruto's eyes as he visibly sweated and was short of breath. Naruto-kun, do you want me to come back? I'm fine with return. To care about my well-being that much that you're willing to sacrifice your freedom again. Now I'm sure I love you. The giant fox stopped fighting the snake for a moment, which led to her getting slapped by its tail. And Naruto-kun? Pay attention to your fight, Kuromi. I removed you from me, but there is still a part of you left. Apparently it was still too big of a jump. I'm at no risk of dying, but with such an empty void of chakra inside me I could pass out easily. I'm just not used to it is all. He leaned his hands on his knees for a moment before standing straight and starting to run forward. His body gained a faint white glow, and his chain shot out and wrapped around his arms. He ran towards the Kage box, dodging many enemies. He made contact with any Suna or Oto nin in reach as his chains stabbed through them, killing most of them and ripping their chakra out. He grew faster and faster as he recovered more and more of his energy and stamina, cutting through his enemies as blood rained following his steps. He raced up the walls of the stadium, draining more people as he recovered enough chakra for him to look a lot less sickly as he grinned again. He was just trying to cut down the numbers and get a little chakra back. He had no idea that if he killed someone with the chains, he could quickly absorb their chakra too. He looked over above the Kage box and saw a large rectangular purple barrier. A normal person won't be able to get through that, but let's try this. He got on level ground again on the roof and dashed straight at the barrier, ignoring the words of the Umbu standing nearby. He noticed the Mizukage was also standing nearby. Apparently when Yamada made the barrier she only grabbed the old man. I didn't back down, but Mei did, knowing it wasn't her fight. None of their guards managed to also make it in, however. Naruto status report. He heard Danzo in his ear as he communicated with him remotely. Chakra levels at 20%, Bijou reserves at 10%. Recovering rapidly and more than combat ready. I assume you have a method for bypassing that barrier? I have an idea that I think will work. Very well, I am dealing with the fallout in different parts of the village. The fact that you've made the fox a useful asset to the village is more than welcomed. At the moment you are more valuable than any of the Kages present. You are free to do whatever it takes to bring Konoha to a favorable outcome, but as you are young and still full of potential, your life weighs higher than Horizon's. Do you understand me? Roger, I get it, Gramps. Future of the village and all that. With that their conversation ended. He actually gave me permission to do whatever it takes. Alright. He dove right at the barrier full speed, surprising those there. He spun like a drill as his chains covered him, stabbing at the barrier. It held up for a second before he slipped right through and crashed into the ground. He wasn't expecting to slip through it so quickly, nor for it to be so taxing on his body at the same time, and so he tumbled across the roof to a stop. The two Kages and Yamada, who was still wearing the robes but had her face revealed, all blinked at him oddly. Oh look, the fox brat is here? Naruto groaned at the Raikage for how he addressed him. I promise you the fox doesn't refer to me as Brad in bed. Can't you think of a better name for me? Everyone looked at him weirdly, causing him to feel a little self-conscious. What? Something wrong with that? If you knew what it was like to bang a dash. No, Naruto, not that. Why are you here? Hiruzen stopped Naruto before he could get going. Oh well, a scent like the snake princess here I'd never forget. I'm here to help. I may not have the experience you two have, but I'm differently good at trapping, restraining, and breaking. The chains around his arms unfurled, hinting as to how he was going to achieve those three things. Finally we meet face to face again, Naruto-kun. Naruto shivered as he felt the long, delicate fingers belonging to cold hands grab him from behind. Yamada was now the one trapping him. He wasn't sure how she got by him so fast. Ah, why did you deny my gift? That hurts my feelings, Naruto-kun. She ran a long snake-like tongue down his cheek. Enko? Now he knew where that woman got it from. He shivered when her tongue slipped into his shirt and started to tickle its way down. He steeled himself quickly and a chain shot out of his bag, stabbing her before she melted into mud. Naruto looked a little lost as he hugged himself. I've been wrongfully touched. They heard the laughter of the snake woman behind her, still in her same spot as if she never left. Must you always prey on children? Hiruzen glared at Yamada for molesting Naruto. Raikage couldn't believe this as he glanced at Naruto, and then back at Hiruzen. So one of your students is a drunk gambler with the moniker Legendary Sucker, another is a frog man who writes porn and can't get properly laid most of the time without paying for it because he's still as hormonal as a 12-year-old supposedly. And now we have this? The snake princess who betrayed your village and seems to be a Shotokan. Naruto cheered up quickly and pointed at the Raikage. I like him. Upon hearing that, the black man smirked for some reason. Hiruzen winced weakly. To be fair, I mostly just taught them how to fight. We all have our quirks, some of them worse than others. Yamada had a tick mark on her cheek as she heard them all talk about her like that. I'll have you know I only experiment on children. Naruto-kun here is the only one who has my express interest. That really doesn't make it any better at all. God, so that means I have to kill you or I'll never be safe. It was then that Naruto realized something. On the slim chance that both the Raikage and Hokage were defeated, he would be left alone with her. No one else had the means to bypass the barrier, and he wasn't sure if he had enough chakra or was strong enough to get back out the barrier on his own. Yamada sighed as she started making hand signs which put the men on guard. I've had enough this. Edo Tensei. Sarutobi's eyes widened, recognizing the jutsu as 3 coffins came up. They were filled with a sense of foreboding when they read what each coffin said. First, second, and fourth. As the coffins fell away, they all gasped. It took some work, but I was able to finally get that boy Minato out of the death god's belly. What's going on? It seems like we've been brought back by that jutsu of mine. The first and second Hokage were revealed in their glory. The fourth looked at them confused before looking off and recognizing both Ai and Sarutobi, but noted that they looked older. He looked at the one behind them and saw the shocked blonde hair and whisker marks. Naruto's eyes also were widened, not believing his eyes. Son/D-Dad? You've grown so much. As much as I'm overjoyed to see you, what's going on? I should be dead. He saw Naruto running at him and smiled as he held his arms out to receive his son. Naruto jumped him and everyone's jaws dropped while Yamada looked on amused. Naruto punched Minato clean in the face and brought his fully body behind the force of that punch. A second later, Minato hit the ground with a small crater as Naruto gave a grunt of exertion before the man went tumbling across the tiles of the roof. Naruto rolled his hand and let out a breath. Phew, I put my hips in that one. Now then, do you know what I had to fucking go through? I had to endure torture at the hands of the village for half my life. If it wasn't for Danzo, I might not have even been physically able enough to even be a ninja. Minato winced as he didn't feel all the pain of that punch since he was dead, but the feelings behind it still registered. His face seemed to rebuild half itself as paper and ash flew to rebuild it. Wait, what? Torture? Danzo? Sarutobi, what the hell happened? He was supposed to be seen as a hero. Hiruzen gained a guilty look as he looked away. He was supposed to, but the villagers couldn't look past their own hatred. They were cut short by extremely loud and crazed laughter as Naruto started to snap. Him looking a little sickly from exhaustion didn't help. Wahahaha. Are you serious, old man? Of course they fucking couldn't. You told them that I contained the being of mass destruction that killed their favorite Hokage, didn't explain to them fully how sealing works, made a rule that said no one could speak about the fox, so I didn't even know why people hated me for the longest, but at the same time the fucking consequences of the actions breaching this law weren't enforced. All the while I could have gotten by enough pain if people just were told I was the 4th's son. Minato was starting to feel sick as to what could happen as Sarutobi looked to be showing his age more and more as Naruto started to lose it. I and Yamada along with the other two resurrected Kages just watched the whole thing go down in interest. Cracks appeared along the chain on his neck as he was breathing hard. On top of that, I had no one to really raise me. Once I could feed myself, I was dropped off in an apartment by myself. No real protection or guidance. No special treatment, my ass. Having someone care after you is not special, it's expected for a child. And Naruto-kun, I at least tried to show up dash. I don't give a fuck what you tried to do. Tried to make up for a life you unnecessarily ruined? Fuck you. You could have even just given me to someone like Kakashi or Jiraiya. Sure, they are terrible role models, but at that point I would have taken anyone, and they were at least close to my parents. Naruto held his chest as he had started to hyperventilate a little. All that pent-up anger and darkness in him was coming up, and it was hard for him to get control of it. Over at the barrier, the Sound Four also had their eyes on Naruto. Wow, this fucker has no issue ripping into his Kage's ass. A red-haired girl named Tayuya spoke out brashly. Jirobo narrowed his eyes and thought. Maybe there was some deceit amongst the ranks? Naruto gripped his chest for a few more seconds as he visibly calmed and straightened his posture and chuckled eerily. You know, it's ironic that it's thanks to Danzo that I'm not emotionally stunted, but it's thanks to you I'm so fucked up. He turned back to Minato, who seemed to be barely holding back his anger at Sarutobi. To answer you two, San, in this village I suffered numerous counts of physical and emotional persecution and torture until the age of 9. All because they thought He thumbed to the side so that they could all see the Kyuubi erecting a snake summon quite messily. Was me. All they need to know was that I was your son. That would have saved me a lot. Sure, you had enemies, but this was also among the top 2 strongest villages. In no other prominent village were the Kage's children ever some grand secret to other villages after they passed a few years old. Wait, Naruto, how is the fox out, and yet you're still here alive? Is that why you look so pale? What happened to the seal? Let me fix it. He waved it off, enjoying his reaction for some odd reason. No, I removed her from me, but I'm still in control of her. I just removed a little more than my body could handle right now. Her? As much as I'd love for you two to catch up on the lost time you two have, I myself am on a schedule. Yamada took out kunai with seals on them and threw them at the heads of the 3 Kage as their scare went dark and they lost control of their bodies. She glanced over at Ai. I'm only here to deal with my teacher, so if you don't interfere we will have no issue. Sorry, but I've always wanted to have a rematch with the one man to outpace me. Well, I can make that happen easily. Hashirama and Tobirama went straight for Hiruzen while Minato went at the Raikage. Minato wordlessly threw a three-pronged knife at him, but Raikage smacked it away harmlessly with his wrist weights. Same old tricks I see. Minato warped to the kunai and threw another at Ai as Naruto twitched. Wait a minute. I moved away from Minato and many more kunai were thrown his way. He wasn't sure which kunai Minato jumped to only for him to be kicked in the back of the head. Raikage growled as he rolled to his feet and more kunai came at him. He had already lost track of Minato, not sure where he went as Naruto's eyes widened. That's it. Minato ran at Ai with a Rasengan in hand, causing him to quickly raise up his lightning armor. The man looked behind himself in surprise when he saw Naruto had jumped at him with a white Rasengan the moment Minato had warped again. Boy, what the hell are you dash? Right when Naruto was within arm's reach, Minato warped to the kunai between them as Naruto grounded his Rasengan into him and smirked. So I was right. The revived Minato continued to get ground into the Raikage's lightning armor by the Shindo-type Rasengan until it went unstable and exploded in a white flash. Kuromi had to be careful with how she moved. Naruto was bold enough to let her release herself in the village, so she had to also be considerate of the collateral damage. She didn't know what was going on with Naruto, but she could feel her other half present somewhere back in his direction. She jumped at the multi-head snake, causing it to snap at her. She twisted in the air, kicking up a vortex for a second because of her size, and slid under the snake and wrapping her tails around it. She swung and threw it high into the air without much effort. She angled her head up and opened her jaws as red energy started to collect, making the nearby villagers panic more. A second later, she fired an actual beam up at the snake. It hit its body, meeting resistance before it quickly broke through it and pierced the snake's body and continued up into the clouds. The snake vanished in a puff of smoke, but it was clear it was likely going to die. I guess I should help out the children who went after Shikaku's host. There was a massive explosion to the far side of her in the forests. As the smoke dispersed, Shikaku roared as he had formed himself completely. I guess I'm a little late. Well, I can't help it if they died already, but I can put my troublesome sibling back in his place. At the woods near Shikaku, Hinata and Sasuke could be seen hiding behind different trees with sweat visible on their bodies. They both were suffering from exhaustion. Hinata because she was a little winded, having just gotten out of the hospital recently, and Sasuke from chakra exhaustion. He used several Chidoras and kept going. He was impressed that Hinata had done better than he had expected, as it was just the two of them, with the others having to face other enemies to give them a chance to get by, but in the end they only were able to delay the inevitable. They paled when Shikaku's eyes glanced towards them as if spotting them and grinned evilly. So that's where you twerps are. His belly swelled as he took in a deep breath and filled his lungs. He hit his chest and an ungodly blast of concentrated wind burrowed straight for them. They thought that was it. That they were going to die there, when a massive shadow soared overhead, blocking out the sun, and landed in front of them, taking the full front of the blast. Kuromi landed with the sound of thunder as she braved the wind. It didn't affect her at all as she grinned at him. Kuromi, what are you doing? I'm protecting the home of my host. What's it look like? Now I'm going to kick your ass so you can stop possessing your host. She dashed straight for him as he blew another air bullet, destroying it as she dove through. She slid behind him, destroying many trees in her path, and wrapped her tails around him. What are you doing? Minimizing how much you damaged the surroundings. Her eyes glowed brightly as her tails started to gain a red haze. Steam started to go off them before Shikaku started to glow red hot where the tails made contact. His face was one of anger and discomfort. You bitch, quit it. You're using this invasion as an excuse to go on a rampage? Saying that's childish would be hypocritical of me, as I could very easily see myself doing the same thing if my host so wished for me to do so. How this village is dealt with will be on my host's terms, so wake your host up, stop depriving him of sleep, because all that does is make you both weaker, and get the fuck back to your territory. She twisted her body, and her tails shredded large molten chunks of his body off. Because it was turned into heated slag, it took him worlds longer to reform himself from those parts. He screamed out in anger and pain as his body was reduced to an amusing-looking tower of sand slowly falling apart, with Shikaku's head resting on top. She looked back in the direction of the barrier Naruto was in and smiled before she dispersed in red yokai that spread thinly over the area. A small amount of it collected on top of Shikaku's destabilizing head as she reformed into her yokai form. She walked up his forehead, ignoring his corpses as she ignored Shikaku. She stood in front of Gaara's unconscious form and grabbed his shoulders and in a quick motion ripped him out of the sand, holding him. As the connection was broken, the sand exploded and they fell straight down. Kuromi landed with a crash, holding Gaara to keep him unharmed as they fell 100 meters. She rested the boy down on the ground and spoke lowly. I meant what I said. Let the boy sleep, and if you cause trouble around my mate again, then I will turn your entire body into glass, shatter you, and then drop you into the bottom of a lake, and freeze it. But you have no control over eyes. She heard Shikaku speak to her telepathically, and she gave an extremely murderous look in turn as her face darkened, and her red eyes stabbed into his mind. Seeing that gaze and such killing intent directed at him through his host as the sand around them started to darken and burn shut him up quickly. Gak! He coughed up blood as a broken rib pierced his lung before he was kicked hard in the stomach by Minato and flew away. I used his lightning armor to speed across the roof and catch Naruto before he hit the barrier. He had blood going down his chin as he shook a bit as I helped him up. Kid, you said you could sense him. What's going on now? I don't have enough chakra to reach my higher state faster. With my sixth sense I can also feel the chakra in the air. I can feel a pull to the kunai he's jumping to a moment before he does. The issue is Dad is still a high-level ninja even without the warping, and now that he's tagged me it's much harder to tell where around me he will appear. Just staying in the fight had lowered his reserves more. Hiruzen was having a hard time with the first two Kages while they fought Minato. I was fighting him no problem, as while Minato could teleport faster than he could travel, I noted that outside that he felt a little less skilled than he thought he would be. Maybe the Kages weren't brought back at their best. That would explain why Sarutobi wasn't dead yet. Yamada just watched them as if this was her entertainment, focusing on Naruto most of the time. Everyone paused for a moment as a thin red haze covered the area and they noticed both the Kyuubi and Ichibi were gone. Naruto smirked as he stood upright and dropped his headband over one eye to focus. Really loving that girl. His lone visible eye turned sunset orange with flecks of red chakra scattered over his body. His chakra levels recovered enough for him to get his second wind and kept rising as his healing sped up too. I'm good now. I take care of my dad. I'll go for that Sannin. He ran straight for Yamada, but Minato warped above him and stabbed down. Right when he was inches away, Naruto flexed his entire body on reflex along with the momentarily widening of his eyes, and Minato stumbled as some invisible force knocked him back and tripped him up. The axe stunned him a little, making him unresponsive to the rakeage. Lariat! An arm crashed into his chest, destroying it as he was sent flying away. Naruto speed over the tiles in seconds towards Yamada, who seemed eager to greet him, only for them to both flinch and jump up into the air as the entire area exploded with tree growth. As they were forced to jump along every rising branches, Yamada noticed that Hiruzen had somehow disabled the second Hokage with a seal of some sorts. Oh no, you don't! She ignored Naruto for the moment and went for her teacher instead, as right at that moment the old man disabled the first as well. She brought out her Kusanagi and swung at him with the intent to kill. I and Naruto, even those who were watching helplessly from the barrier, all had their eyes widen as she ran the old man through. It went right through his gut. The wound was dangerous but not untreatable if they helped him fast enough. However, it seemed he had other intentions. His hands shakily but quickly went through a series of seals, performing a jutsu the woman had never seen before. Reaper Death Seal. Naruto felt a sharp pain in his head at that name, as if he'd heard that before. Reaper Death Seal. He heard a voice in his head and realized in moments that that was his father. He saw flashes of hazy memories in his head. Perhaps the oldest memories he had, as he saw his mother and father critically wounded as Minato performed some kind of jutsu to seal the fox, forming an aberration of some sort behind him. A ghastly figure emerged behind Sarutobi, causing Naruto's memories to all come full circle. I can see it. He realized at that point that he was probably the only one not involved in the jutsu that could see the death god. Was it because the jutsu had been used on him in the past? His sense went off as he saw Yamada smirk and a familiar pull happen behind Hiruzen as a three-pronged kunai was thrown at his back. Naruto used his chakra to rocket forward, releasing a small shockwave from the force as he speed to catch the flash. He was too slow as the kunai stabbed the old man's back, and Minato warped to grab it and pulled, slashing into the rest of his back. Hiruzen vomited more blood but continued to hold on. Ghost hands reached out to grab all three Kages, and Yamada, who felt a chill down her spine and the edges of fear as the hands started to pull. Kill him! She barked her order to Minato, who formed a Rasengan to end it, only for Naruto to appear behind him at that moment and grab onto him, locking his arms and head in place. "I'm stopping you and taking back the other half, Dad." Chains came out of his back and ran through Minato's stomach where the Shinigami was pulling him. It was at this point mistakes were made and Naruto felt like his body was freezing and burning at the same time. Of somewhere in the village killing sound and protecting civilians from them, Kuromi's head snapped in his direction, and she screamed through the link. "Naruto, what the hell are you doing?" It was at that moment mistakes were made. If Naruto had thought about it for a moment, he may have thought to ask Kuromi about the nature of her other half, to which he would be told that that other half was more hazardous. If he had considered any of the risks to his action, he would have wondered if creating a chakra connection with the dead Hokage to gain back a chakra being would have just opened up a connection to the Shinigami connected to Minato to drain Naruto of his soul. If Naruto had thought about it for a second and considered the Shinigami as a sentient being for a second, he might consider the fact that ripping the other half of the fox out of Minato would act as a violation of the death seal contract Minato had placed on both himself and Naruto to split up the half, thereby incurring the death god's anger onto Naruto. But the question Naruto should have asked first and foremost was if his body could handle it. Cracks spread on the chain on his neck from losing control while he tried to hold on. Hiruzen was trying as he could to seal the Snake Princess as well, but the number he was trying to seal at once along with his injuries were not making it easy at all. Naruto felt energy coursing through his veins as they literally started to glow, and his headband was blown off. His bloodline allowed him to sense movement and vibrations in the area around him. When his eyes were orange, that was from drawing in the energy around him, also allowing him to sense it. With a physical connection in this state via his chains, he could drain exponentially faster as long as the target was killed or dead. But what he had never expected to happen was for him to be in a tug-of-war match with the Shinigami. The bringer of death pulled on his soul while Naruto forced it back. He just had to hold out enough until Hiruzen died, right? Back and forth. Back and forth. God, this was painful as he pulled against his soul, feeling it rip apart. It was thanks to his enormous willpower that he was able to defy the god. "Mortal, you will not hold me back. I will devour your soul." Naruto's eyes started to glow white as his energy overflowed from absorbing the other half of the fox, and his soul could be seen overflowing from his eyes like watchtowers. The god was going to kill him. They were going to take his soul just like they were taking the Kage's. He understood the realms of responsibility, and that soul gathering was one of the things unique to the Shinigami, but did anyone ever fight against it? And if they did, then how? He didn't care. It didn't matter. His body hurt, he had unstable fox chakra flowing through his veins that felt like liquid fire, he had an emotional outburst not that long ago, met his dead dad, was molested by a snake woman which gave him an awkward boner, and a number of other things. He'd had enough for today, enough holding back. Cracks spread further on the chain around his neck as it now started to fall apart, and his hair started to blow wildly from some unblown breeze. "You want my soul? Then fine. But I'm going to make sure you bite off far more than you can chew." Right then and there no other fighting matter. Not his dad who he was draining, or the Hokage that was dying, nor the Snake Princess that was trying to survive. All that was in front of him was the Shinigami as all else went dark. Everything else was gone as his very soul battled against the deity. In the spiritual realm, Naruto drifted in a void before the chain shattered. His body went completely dark like a shadow and a pure white chakra erupted from his body. The Shinigami, if the face could animate and express itself, would show one of someone being shocked and surprised as they stared in awe of Naruto's soul. Naruto didn't even register how Minato's body had been reduced to ash in his grasp, its connection with Yamada having been erased by his chakra, nor the fact that Hiruzen was dead or that Yamada was in pain for some reason. But he stood there, darkness hazing over him and glowing white orbs for eyes staring down the death god like a predator. A normal person's soul was the size of an apple, the soul of a shinobi was around body-sized or several times that. Naruto's, however, just a drop of it for the Shinigami to taste, and it equaled that of several men. And then time stopped with everything becoming grayscale. Without a word, Naruto jabbed an uppercut into the Shinigami's torso and time continued. The being now knew panic as Naruto was able to actually make contact with it on his own. The next second later, Naruto held up his words as his soul started to rush into the Shinigami gut. "Eat your fill. Let's see you take the ultimate weapon. The value of 10 souls. The value of 100 souls. The value of 1,000 souls. The value of 10,000 souls. The number kept rising as if Naruto's very being deep down was a nuclear reactor of endless energy, as his soul yelled in defiance that it would not be contained or consumed. Too many souls at once as the value raised to 1,000,000 extremely rich and potent souls. Faster than the Shinigami could hope to process and digest. It was too much as its mask and body started to crack as white light shone through, Naruto's soul being too much to contain. This wasn't human. That's what it thought as it actually became visible to every mortal nearby and screamed out what one would describe later as quite feminine. And then all went quiet and all the spiritual energy imploded. No one knew what it was, nor the cause of it, but a moment later the entire village was hit with an explosion of white. 1 week later, Kuromi's face was a whirlpool of emotions. She knew what she might have to deal with, but she put the hat on anyway. She put it on for him. She showed a face of determination as she looked ahead and opened the double doors to walk out to the balcony, and saw Danzo there standing with an undiscerning face as he nodded to her. She stood to the side of him wearing the robes and garments of her position as her tails waved out behind her for all to see. Danzo, as it had been decided was the best to give the speech, did so. People of Konohagakure, it is with great grief that our Sandaime Hokage has finally passed, but we must also move forward and prove that we are still as strong a nation as we have always been. And so I bring to you our new protector of the leaf, the Kyubi no Yoko herself, Kuromi as the Godaime Hokage. There were some cheers and clapping after those died down as everyone was overcome with an awkwardness when no one else clapped. Someone spoke out voicing everyone's thoughts. Is this a joke? She angled her Kage hat down a little to hide her face, which was twitching as she closed her eyes and took a deep breath. I wish it was. Chapter 16, Hokage. Bleary eyes peered open out of focus as a swarm of muted colors washed over his vision. He closed his eyes for a moment to collect himself before he opened them again, and his eyes started to focus. He noticed the depressing white walls of the room he was in, and quickly figured out he was in the hospital. He never loved coming here for obvious reasons, but sometimes it was okay. As his senses became reoriented, he became quickly aware of the body next to him. Kuromi was right there sitting in the chair next to his bedside. Her head had dropped forward, showing she had fallen asleep. The soft sound of her breathing as she slept put a small smile on his face. He moved to get up only for Kuromi's eyes to instantly snap open and turning towards him. She relaxed a second later, showing she had simply reacted to his movement, as she grabbed his hand and held it to her cheek. So you finally woke up? Woke up? Oh right, the invasion. So what happened? She gave him a level look as she answered him slowly. Well, one of the big things would be that this village's Hokage died. She saw her container's eyes widen a degree at the information before they slowly relaxed, and he let out a sigh. Alright, what's next? You took that well. Yeah, well, the old S may have been a shit leader and fucked over my life, but at one time he was the only one who even looked my way. It's better for me that he's gone, but it would have been good if he wasn't so lazy in his decisions. Well, after the fight with the snake woman, I guess she had to cut her losses because she ran away not long after you passed out. I cleaned up here and there in the village. After everything was over, a number tried to kill me, but most were smart enough to keep their hands to themselves. I found your body and carried you here. Many saw, and I guess seeing you and the dreaded demon in different bodies confused them. As you rested and healed, there were several who tried to break in and hurt you or me. After a few hours, that bandaged old man had the room protected by his puppets. A few did come to visit you though. Mainly that cute mouse child with the pale eyes. Hinata, I think her name, was, in some of those other children from your graduating class. Your teacher stopped by too, though I don't think he likes me. She shrugged, not really caring. You've been out for around 2 days. More than enough time for you to heal, but I'm assuming you did something else that was really stupid for you to be out this long. He scratched his head and frowned. I'm actually not sure. I saw some things, but I'm not sure if that was even real. If it was real, then I don't know how I'm alive. I think I can answer that. They both broke out in a cold sweat as all color left the room, and floating in the air on the other side of Naruto, opposite of Kuromi, a figure appeared. They saw a figure in a long white kimono and purple trim. On their face was a dark purple hanya mask holding a long knife in its mouth. They moved the mask to rest on the side of their head, showing an alluring, otherworldly woman with long and messy white hair that went down over one eye. Her eyes being a gold cold and slanted, and her skin being a pale yet creamy color. Her face had tints of purple, and with her hand being visible after moving her mask, she appeared to have long and dark nails. From her head went out a pair of dark horns. Kuromi's tail quickly bristled on end before the woman held up her hand. I mean you no harm. Naruto didn't react as strongly but still looked curious. Who are you? Well, many would know me as the Shinigami. You may call me Neo if you wish. The death god. I mean goddess? But how? Like aren't you supposed to look demonic? Naruto nodded as Neo smiled. Humph, well usually I do, but you see after you filled me with so much of your spiritual juices I was able to regain my original and youthful appearance. But because of that I am now pregnant with your child. Naruto just started at her with a blank face for a moment as Kuromi looked horrified. A few seconds later the girl laughed at them, causing Kuromi to glare at her. Fufufu, I was only joking. But I did absorb a lot of your spiritual power. A mortal is not supposed to have that much, but you appear to be different. The amount you let go, though, don't do that again because you can die from doing that. The soul also takes a while to heal when part of it is forcibly ripped off. Because of how strong and abundant your spiritual energy was, it actually allowed my body to be visible to mortals. Oh. So what now? She shrugged and floated down to his bed, propping her elbows up on it, as she gave a small smile to him. Nothing really? As an actual god, I'm not allowed to interfere a lot with the mortal realm. You've caught my attention, however, and the flavor of your soul is one of a kind, so I think I'll stick around every now and then. That's it. I expected you to offer something. Or maybe be pissed at how I disgraced the death god's seal and violated your contract. It was a contract placed on you without your consent. You have a right to violate it however you wish, as you having Ms. QB sealed, and you honestly did not make the world a better place. You may enjoy your time with her, and so things are turning out better than what could be predicted, but that was not the intentions of the one who sealed you anyway. Naruto took that all in and accepted. Neo chose to leave out the fact that in his berserk state he actually struck her. Making physical contact with a god is not something that is supposed to be feasible. But now that I've said my part, look forward to seeing me in the future. I'll be around. She gave them a nice smile to both of them, Kuromi still being on guard around the goddess before she faded out of existence, and a few seconds later her presence was gone. Naruto still wasn't sure how he should respond to what just happened. He knew gods were real, but to have an actual conversation with one, and the Shinigami at that, while still being alive and having said Shinigami turn out to be an extremely hot girl that looked around Kuromi's physical age, was not something he had been expecting. As Naruto was lost in his own thoughts, Kuromi calmed herself again and looked at him. I was worried, you know. After you broke your limit against the snake woman, you started to damage your body. Then at one moment, which I guess was when you encountered that death goddess, you actually started killing your body like you were self-destructing. That's why you took so long to heal. On the outside the damage looked superficial, but internally your bones and organs were a lot more fragile than usual, and your chakra coils were burnt, which made it take longer for you to heal until they repaired themselves. If you had been attacked right after you passed out, so much as a good punch in the right area may have been lethal for you. He didn't say anything but just looked at his hands. He didn't want her to feel so worried and helpless as she probably did, but he was not aware that the chain seal he put on himself had such consequences. His body really was not ready for it, he supposed. But something changed since that fight. I don't know what happened, but that metal in your body, it's even harder for me to tell it apart from you now, and your chakra seems to resonate with it. That might be good news. He would have to find out later. Good to know, Kuromi. He motioned with his hand, causing her to absently obey, and moved towards him. When she was close enough, his hand slid through her hair and held the back of her head. She moaned and closed her eyes as Naruto kissed her. It was a sweet and deep kiss as they communicated their feelings to each other. She was so happy to have the intimate moment with him. The past couple days had been stressful and foreign to her, as she had interacted with so many humans. Some in a positive way, but was mostly negative, and yet she made sure not to leave his side. For Naruto, just touching her was refreshing, as she was his lifelong partner. It was weird, but even though he finally separated their bodies, he didn't feel a sense of emptiness without her. After a minute they parted slowly, and Naruto fumbled with his words a little. Kuromi, I love you. You know? Her eyes glimmered a little in surprise and emotion before she grabbed his hand and put his palm to her cheek. And I as well. You know? It was at that moment he started to feel hot, and not in the good way. Kuromi notices his eyes suddenly shift from their blues to orange, and steam started to go off his body as he felt pain. Before he could figure out what was wrong, his eyes zoned out, and the next thing he knew, he was in his mindscape. His mind had been a lush meadow and forest with a fenced-in area and small home because of his efforts to make the place more comfortable for Kuromi. Now, however, the grass was charred black and trees were burning as the home was also in a similar state, bellowing smoke. Behind the wall of smoke he saw glowing red eyes before it was blown away with a roar. He shielded his eyes before getting caught off guard when he saw a nine-tailed fox. For a second he thought it was Kuromi, and he still thought it was her, but something was different. The fur was a touch darker, and the scales were as well coming off as a bit gray. The beast dashed head-on for Naruto, startling him for a moment. Before the Kyuubi could pass the fence, which they might have been able to with the state the seal was in now, he instinctively used his chains. They shot all out of the ground, many more than what he would have been able to easily use in reality. They wrapped around the beast's arms and legs and neck, restraining it as its outstretched claws stopped a few feet from his face. Bastard! It let out in a deep growl as Naruto rubbed his chin and thought. Well, this explains the lack of an empty feeling inside me. So you are the other half? You're pretty lively, aren't you? Naruto started to lose interest when he got no response, and they continued to growl at him. I'll come back when you've calmed down some. He spun on his heel and walked off, only to feeling a change as his chains clinked and tightened. But don't leave me like this. You bastard. He looked back and lost himself as he saw Kuromi, now bound by chains, glaring at him with an evil smirk on her face. You wouldn't just leave me like this, would you? Naruto walked towards her, but before he could get close enough there was a flash of red in front of him before the Kuromi buckled over as something stabbed her in her stomach. Jiga! We've been apart for near 15 years. I suppose even if we were the same being, that's plenty enough of time for us to become different people. Kuromi didn't remove her hand from her other as the other half glared at her. So the memories I got recently weren't false. You've really allowed us to be mated to a human? Sorry, but this is how things are now. I love him, but you have no reason to hate him now, do you? You saw the memories of what me just being sealed in him caused, correct? The other tisked and gritted their teeth but looked away, nodding. Good, so you understand. Act against him, and we will literally be our own worst enemy. Anything he asks of me, I will do it for him. She pulled her hand out of her other stomach, causing the hole that was spilling red yokai to heal over. Naruto let go of his control on the chains, letting the other fox woman drop to the ground, and moved closer. So since I guess you two reached an agreement, what should I call you? The woman glared at him, making him sweat drop a little. She quickly looked abashed as Kuromi sent a dark look her way. Call me whatever you wish. Kuromi gave out an exasperated sigh before giving a small smile to Naruto. Just call her Akami, love. Naruto smirked a little at her choosing that name. The two fox women did look identical, except Akami looked a little darker and more malicious. Akami it is then. So what now? Well, you can do whatever you want. You can let her out, but I recommend at least waiting till you can trust that she won't go on a rampage the moment you do. Akami was feeling betrayed as she glared at her twin, who smirked back. Akami gained a smirk of her own as a thought occurred to her. She looked back at Naruto and sent him a look that made him shiver. Come on now, Naruto-kun. If you let me out, I'll do whatever you want. Naruto looked at her blankly and pointed to Kuromi. You twin is right there. Sexual favors won't work that easily when I can just go to Kuromi-chan. While I may not be able to fully stop you in the real world, with Kuromi's help it would be easy. I could rape you and I wouldn't feel guilty about it because I know you'd at least half enjoy it. Kuromi grinned evilly in agreement. Oh, it would be more than half, I can promise you that. Akami looked helpless as she couldn't do anything. This isn't fair. Well then, act like a good girl and I'll treat you like a good girl. His eyes refocused as he was in the hospital again. His tongue swished in his mouth as he noticed how strange it felt. Looking over at the nightstand, he saw a mirror and grabbed it. Looking at it, his eyes widened in surprise. God, I'm sexy. Kuromi blinked at him oddly, having thought he already knew that. He pulled at his cheek and saw what the problem was. His teeth were sharp and predator-like. It reminded him of Zabuza actually, and he didn't know if his cursed sword was the cause of it, or if it was because of the other half of the fox being in him. He swung himself out of the bed and pulled off his bandages and gauze from his upper body, as he no longer had any injuries at all. As if on cue, the door opened and Danzo made his way in. The Warhawk locked gaze with Kuromi, and the tension was thick for a moment before it passed. You have finally awoken. Yep, seems I overdid things a little. If you are here to catch me up to speed, Kuromi already told me the bulk of it. Danzo tapped his cane on the ground as Naruto stretched. This saves me time then. The current order of business is Sarutobi's funeral, which is tomorrow, of which attendance is mandatory for all shinobi. After that we will need to select a new Hokage candidate. Naruto ignored the news about the late Sandaime. So who's it going to be then? You. Danzo scoffed as he kept his expression hard. If this were a decade prior, then I would be more than ready to take the position. However, I am old. Naruto snickered, to which Danzo ignored as well. How long I would be able to stay in office would not be long, more than likely, nor am I that favored amongst the village. There are only two other choices, I would say, for the position of Hokage. There is Hitaki Kakashi, as he was a gifted shinobi, and while he has let his skills deteriorate, he is still the village's top jonin as well as the most experienced one. He is almost solely an assassin, however, which would put him at a disadvantage to many Kages, not counting the fact his stamina and reserves are poor. Yet just thinking of that scarecrow being Hokage makes my ass hurt. The final choice would be you. Haha. Wait, what now? He could have sworn that for the smallest fraction of a second he saw Danzo smirk at catching him so off guard. You are young, hated by much of the village, and a rookie. However, you are powerful, progressing rapidly, and have the backbone and intelligence to lead the village over the council. Your control over your bija helps close the skill gap between your power and that of other Kages. Ignoring your eccentricities, you can bring this village to glory. I know this personally. I will also be there for aid and guidance when you need it. He held up his hand, cutting Danzo off. I have a better idea. We will make Kuromi the Hokage. The root leader's lone visible eye widened infinitely. It took him so long to get back under control that Naruto was able to burn the image of it in his mind. Kuromi had a similar expression on his face. Assuming I agreed with this terrible suggestion, what would be your reasoning for having her lead instead of yourself? Think of it this way, Danzo. We would have the most powerful bijou standing at the top of this village. It would send an immediate message to any village that even if we were invaded, it only made us more dangerous. If I was made Kage, other nations wouldn't immediately see me as a threat, and that could cause problems. The villagers are idiots, but people are also sheep. She was widely hated, and the reason why I was hated, but she was seen saving many during the invasion. That may not be enough, but if you publicly back her, that could be just enough of the push that is needed to get things going. And even if it's not, Kuromi was meant to rule, and I will be able to control things from the shadows, just like you. Danzo looked at Naruto dumbfounded for a second before the smallest nigh undetectable smile showed on his face for a moment. He knew the boy was smart, but he was still surprised every now and then. So you want your partner to be the Hokage, but you want to replace me? Very well, if it is the understanding that Kuromi-san will act in the village's best interest and obey you, then I will support this. At the old man finally referring to her by name, she slowly nodded, unsure of herself, as everything was happening so fast. You Naruto-kun? Also look at it this way. A bija as a Kage gives the village a certain sense of invulnerability. Most mortals do not have the means to kill a bijou, so the only option would be to seal her. If that happens, I can just as easily find her and break that seal. Plus I have both halves of her now too. Danzo rose an eyebrow at that, as he knew something had changed but wasn't sure what it was. Oh, then that makes your proposal all the more appealing. Know to expect that there will likely be both civilians and shinobi actively acting against her. Let them come, this will be a lesson to them that they will get no protection for their actions anymore. Kuromi will be free to do with them as she wishes. A Kage should more than have that right after all. To make sure she's not undermined and that things progress smoothly, let's have the root take a more obvious role with the Umbu and build another level behind them of even more elite shinobi. I will also be making my own division active. Your little circle is composed of poverty and thugs, correct? Even if some of them are resourceful, they are all still civilians for the most part. He grinned, flashing off his new sharp teeth. I've been working on a bit of a project and experiment for that, don't worry about it. To increase the success rate, however, I'm going to need a really good doctor. Kuromi looked down as she followed behind Naruto a bit nervously. People gave her a wide berth, not sure how to react. The killing intent Naruto gave out casually was enough for no one foolish enough to strike against her. Kuromi wasn't sure what Naruto meant by his own division, but from the few memories she was able to get on it, she had an idea. Kuromi, hold your head up. You are above them, and you will also be above them officially in a few days, so get used to it. If it's not going to bother you, then I will hold strong. She moved her head up looking serious and noticed as they got closer to the slums where Naruto lived that people were less cautious and many looked his way, giving him discreet nods both in greeting and respect. He sent out hand signs which led to those who saw it communicating with others. She didn't know what the signs meant but would ask him later. They entered the apartment with him locking the door behind them as Kuromi finally spoke out. "What the hell, container? You are making me Hokage? Not only is this a terrible idea, but I don't even want to do this." He was startled a bit at how fast she reeled on him. "I thought you said you would do whatever I said?" She lost a lot of the heat in her words as she stumbled. "Why yes, but..." Naruto sighed in disappointment. "I should have known it wouldn't be that easy." She grew confused when he walked towards her until she was suddenly pushed towards the couch. "Naruto!" Her shout of indignation was silenced when Naruto suddenly shadowed her as he pinned her. She shivered at the look he gave her, and the feel he gave off. He really had grown in the past month, as he was now taller than her, and his scent was strong. "Looks like I need to persuade you." Whatever he did to himself had in a way froze him in time, so the past 2 days he did not waste himself, or anything like that while he was in his coma, but the sweat from battle still clung to him, and his musky scent made her skittish. "Why you haven't bathed? I know you like this kind of thing." Not wasting any time, he ripped off her top and roughly grabbed her breasts, making her give a pained moan as he gripped them. "My perverted little vixen who falls to her baser instincts at a little musk. I've noticed your body is tougher now, probably because you've been released, but that doesn't matter. It just means I can be rougher since my little vixen is also a masochist." Chakra started to emanate from him, and through his hands striking her sensitive nipples and breasts. Her eyes widened as she screamed out through clenched teeth as her body convulsed from a sudden orgasm. He blinked and removed his hand to look at it confused. "That was an accident, and yet I felt no pain from it." He gained a sinister look as he grinned back at her, making her nervous. "And Naruto-kun, see, can't we discuss the Kage another way?" His hand emanated chakra again, and in a quick movement her slapped her right between her legs. She wasn't able to keep her jaw shut this time as she gave out a wanton cry, her shorts being destroyed in the process, as she squirted herself again. His chakra had invasively shot up through her womanhood into her core. He got off her as she rolled onto her side and held her hands between her legs in fetal position. "Why?" She whimpered as she was not expecting her container to use his chakra in such a way. If she were in a clearer state of mind, she would know that she could probably physically overpower him if she really tried, but the aura he gave off kept her in her place. Her question was answered by Naruto discarding his own clothes. She cried a little as his erection pointed angrily at her. He was big before, but it seemed his entire body had grown in the past month. A little thicker and longer, with his apparent sadistic streak. She didn't know what to do with her arousal. In a smooth motion he grabbed her leg to pull her towards him, and angled himself inside her reddened and dripping snatch. She saw stars as he gave a vicious thrust. He crashed into a womb hard, making her squirt again. Ah! Her back was arching and her toes curling as her tongue hung out. Her pussy was already hurting in pleasurable pain from coming multiple times in quick succession. "Wow, you are just spraying all over yourself, eh? Looks like my future Kage needs some more discipline." He pulled out and thrust in her deliberately. He greatly enjoyed the feeling of her clenching around his dick so snugly. "Yes, I'm going to have to discipline you a lot more often." He leaned forward and locked lips with her, getting her attention again before he leaned back. "I want you to be this village's Hokage because you are the only one I trust to hold that position." "Yes, but that doesn't mean I'm suited for the position," she moaned out as he started thrusting into her at a constant pace. "If you do a good job, I'll find new ways to spoil and pamper you, and I'll do it a lot more often," she whined as he was nearing his edge. That was a really great deal, but she had her pride. "And if you don't, you're free to go." She was right there at the edge, only for him to stop at the last moment. "But I'll stop having sex with you for the next month starting now." She looked at him in horror for actually stopping. She glared at him heatedly behind her eyes, making his dick twitch excitedly. "Cammy, she's so cute." "Fine, damn it, I'll do it." Just what I wanted to hear. He had been bluffing, but she didn't need to know that. He started up his thrust again, and went even harder as the couch started to break, and her eyes rolled back. "Yes, yes, I'll be your Kage." He buried himself in her, going right into her womb and let loose. She felt her heat pass as his thick cum was packed in her. Her pants died down when he pulled out as she wore a content smile. she squeaked out when he spun her around and sheathed himself in her snatch again, pushing out a few globs of cum. Yeah! He had grabbed her ass and sneakily slid his thumb into her rosy backdoor. Her breathing grew harder as she actually pushed up against him. Oh, you like that, do you? He started to grab her ass harder, massaging it, causing his thumb to wiggle in her for more stimulation. Using his handhold as leverage, he pistoned into her already well-lubricated pussy, the sound of wet flesh smacking against each other filling the room as their combined juice continued to drip out. He was hitting the right spots, which only made his girth more deadly. Her womb was feeling numb from the repeated bashing of his fat head against it. A few minutes passed, and she came again. She gripped tightly on his cock, squeezing down, causing him to growl as he held off his own orgasm as long as he could. As her high started to taper off, he roughly grabbed the chain around her neck and pulled it back, choking her a little as she was held up against him. She didn't know when he put the chain on her again, nor was she able to think about it. He whispered throatily in her ear as she quivered and struggled a little to breathe, having forgotten in the heat of things that she didn't need air. Come on now, Hokage-sama. What would your siblings think if they saw you being used as my plaything? She let out gurgled screams as he started to thrust in suddenly, and hard bruising her walls before he buried himself and hard lifting her up off the ground a little by only his chain and dick alone. His dick swelled before letting out a second time. Not all the cum could stay inside of her ruined pussy as it shot out from where they were connected, pooling on the floor. He let out a long breath, it coming out as steam as his coming slowed to a stop. He let go of the chain and she fell forward like a sack of potatoes as part of her fell over the back of the couch, putting her in an inelegant position. His seed dripping out of her flush and quivering folds as she laid over the couch covered in sweat and breathing hard. Such a glorious picture, he burned it into his memory. He could end it there, but he would be leaving soon, so he wanted to make sure he was thorough. All right, now release your fox traits, Kuromi. She wordlessly obeyed as her fox ears and tail sprouted. Her tail hitched up and leaned to the side so he could have easy access to mate her. He accidentally bit his cheek at that, getting triggered at the thought that he body did that, instinctively showing begging him to fuck her. He stabbed into her again, holding on to the base of her tail tightly. The axe sent shocks through her body until Naruto used his chakra and literal shocks went through her body. She came like a fountain, ruining the already stained couch even more. While she didn't need to eat, it was times like this that she did need plenty of water. He knew she could take it as he continued his rough way of fucking her. He leaned forward and sunk his teeth into the sweet spot of her neck. She cried out in pleasure as she closed her eyes and smiled, leaning back into him. He dragged his tongue over the wound, tasting blood, which honestly confused him. Bijou didn't bleed. But he would think about it later. He had no plans today, so he could at least go another hour before they could stop. They continued to rut for a few hours before they stopped, more than satisfied. He leaned up against a wall as people went by in dark attire as the funeral for the Sandane just ended. He was almost late for it as he had overslept. He didn't know why, but he just felt more exhausted than he should. Kuromi apparently had taken to watching him sleep, since it was rare that she would rise so much earlier than him. She didn't seem to mind if the sex wore him out. In fact, she was very happy with how the previous night was, but at the same time was pissed at the job he gave her. He didn't comment on it much, even if it hurt his pride a bit, but he had a feeling his exhaustion had nothing to do with the sex. He was almost completely sure it had something to do with him force-feeding that Shinigami woman his soul. Most didn't notice him as it was raining, and he wore all black like everyone else. Black pants, and a black hoodie hiding most of his head. He would be lying if he said he didn't feeling anything from that funeral. As much as the old man fucked up his childhood, he was a potential family member that would never be now. Well, it didn't matter anymore because there was going to be some serious changes. He sensed eyes on him, putting him on guard. Naruto was almost always aware, but in a crowded area while it was raining he could not pinpoint the target at all. It started to thunder as Naruto took to the roofs. He made way fast as he skated across the roofs, kicking up water and dashing over streets. He didn't notice how smooth he was doing it as the person following him was gaining fast. He made a far leap to a roof and skidded to a stop while turning around to catch his pursuer. There was a flash of lightning behind him as his eyes constricted as the threat showed themselves. He looked behind himself a bit nervously to see the wreckage smirking at him. "So you knew I was following you? But sorry to say no one can outpace me." The man then laughed loudly as Naruto felt unnerved. "He's way too fast, I didn't even feel him move around me." The man could have tried to kill him right there, and Naruto wasn't sure if his auto-reaction would have defended him fast enough, especially since the Kage had been coated in some kind of lightning for a moment. Anyway, son, I wanted to discuss some things with you. I was impressed with your display in the exams, and how you made a fool of my Genin Jinchuriki. Also, I have been at odds with your parents, when they were alive. I notice you are not the most well-received here in this village. During times when a village has no leader, shinobi are considered unfledged, and so are able to leave switch villages if they wish to, and is a rule that 3 of the 5 major villages share. I am here to offer you a place in my village. Your natural talent, skills, and status would be more than welcome. Naruto was surprised out of his shit by that offer as he righted his posture and relaxed. That doesn't sound bad at all. Not sure about leaving, but I think we can work out some kind of deal. You see, in the next few days. He was glad it didn't rain the whole day, as he wanted to quickly go to the training fields and, well, train. He was faster than just about any genin, but Lee would have been able to match, or maybe even pass him if he opened 4 or 5 gates, and there were more gates than that, which meant he had to get faster. He had no idea how fast Foot and Yujito would have gotten when they used their beasts, and he had never seen Killer Bee in battle. But the biggest kicker was the rakeage. Just that one instant, and Naruto was quickly able to assess that the Dark Man could have killed him in that instant, and if he had fought the Sandaime he would have quickly killed him too. In a wood of assassins called ninjas, speed was possibly the most important category. If you could kill them faster than they could react, then not much else mattered, and that man clearly was not just all speed. Judging by his build, he shouldn't have been that fast at all, but he was, and that meant Naruto had to get faster. He already knew how to use his chakra to make himself faster. He was looking through an expanded bingo book to get any ideas for how to expand his idea of skills and maybe figure something out to invent for his arsenal. It contained threats both dead and alive across generations and held more information than the standard bingo book. This was a gift to him from Danzo after he woke up a day ago. Hashirama, the first Hokage. Not known for his speed, but was a powerful all-rounder shinobi, but was more suited as a fortress destroyer. Not what I need. Tobirama, the second Hokage, had a godlike water affinity. Well, that doesn't help me at all, since that's the one affinity I don't have. Knew a bit of space-time fuinjutsu to move at instant high speed. He read that over again, curious. Well, that's not commonly taught. So seals can be the solution to my speed issue? I might think about that later. I want a more combat-flexible solution. He kept flipping through the pages, not finding what he was looking for. Madara's in here? Nothing in here leads me to believe his way of combat will help me. Itachi Uchiha is very fast and has a fast combat speed. Not known to do anything extra aside from chakra enhancing and the benefits of the Sharingan to speed this up. He flipped to one page that made him stall. Shursui, master of the Shunshin. Now deceased, he used his Sharingan to handle the speed of the Shunshin. That, combined with his own talent at using the jutsu at a rapid speed, allowed him to be extremely dangerous on the field of battle for as long as his chakra lasted. While very fast to use it in combat is probably limited to a short range, since you have to picture where you want to go or direct it down your line of sight. Even then, I don't believe the Shunshin would be faster than the rakeage technique. Combined with my chakra, however. He held up a seal with one hand as he prepared to use the jutsu, this time using the amount of chakra he would use to create a simple clone. It was hard to actually get that chakra and hold on to it. On a whim, he closed one of his eyes and things became almost unreally clearer. His eye took on a light glow as his starburst blues dances brilliantly. There was a displacement around as it was like time slowed, but really he just moved a lot faster as he crouched down preparing to go, as pebbles rose around him from the wind and chakra around him. He stumbled a bit before he even got going and dropped his chakra. He sighed and stood back up, noticing how his legs were subtly spasming. Come on out, I know you're there. Naruto spoke out, having felt eyes on him for a while now. Whoever it was, their chakra was strong, but they were doing a much better job concealing it. However, you can hide your chakra all you want. With how close they were to him, and them being the only people in the area, it was a lot easier for him to detect their actual bodies. Which is why he already knew they were female. He was on guard after that little meeting with the rakeage, so was on edge when the fucking hot Mizukage walked out from behind a tree, but also relieved by the fact she didn't just straight up rush him. I wasn't expecting to be detected by a genin. I guess your sensory abilities are indeed impressive. She was wearing dark clothing which showed she had attended the funeral as well. Damn, the dark businesswoman attire fit her unfairly well, especially with her top knot missing. What can I do for you, Mizuki-san? She smiled at him lightly and squinted a little at him, not greeting her as formally as others would. Well, since you know who I am, this makes it easier. I am Terumi, May the 5th Mizukage of the Mist, and you have my condolences for the death of your Hokage. I saw your performance, Naruto-kun, and I was very impressed. I impress a lot of people nowadays. But you aren't here just because of that, are you? Not that I would mind if you were. He gave her a sly look that caused the older woman to raise an eyebrow, growing amused. Fufu, you're a bold one for your age. To say I'm not here because I was impressed wouldn't be entirely true, but I'm here for some information if you wouldn't mind parting with it. Depends on what it is. During your fight with the other hosts, you brandished a huge blade of swords. While darker in shade and slightly different, it still heavily resembled the blade of one of the legendary swordsmen of my village. That would be because I got it from Zabuza himself. I fought him at one point, and in our clash parts of his blade broke off in my body. Because of its trait of growing from blood and my own unstable chakra, it mutated. After a while I was able to call the weapon out at will without hurting myself. If you want the original blade back, it's in Wave. I used it as a marker for his grave. She looked a bit surprised to hear that, but had suspected it. She noticed as he spoke that his teeth were quite a deal sharper than she remembered. He would fit in perfectly with the other swordsmen. I will have that sword retrieved at some point in the near future then. The other thing I want to discuss with you would be if you had any interest joining the Mist Village. We are rebuilding and would more than welcome someone with talent such as yours, along with your possibility to be a new swordsman. Your bloodline would be welcomed. You could replace our loss of a Jinchuriki, and your Uzumaki status would make you royalty, as the Uzumaki always had close ties with Water Country. If that's not enough, I'm sure we could work something out. The sultry look she gave him at the end made him gulp, as he wasn't expecting her to subtly try to seduce him to get him to join her village. Damn, if you had gotten to me before the Reikage, I might have said yes. She paled a little as his tone grew worried. He offered you a place in his village as well? Yup, I'm pretty popular today, I guess. I refused, however. Tell you what, I know who the next Hokage of this village will be, and I have extremely close ties with them. How would you like to form an alliance of sorts? I can market my seals in your village and maybe other things as long as I have the freedom to enter your village? She looked slightly frustrated, as she would have rather him become her shinobi, but this would likely be the best offer she could get. I will heavily consider your offer. If I can have smooth relations with the new leader of this village as well as the hero of Wave, it would work out all the better for my own village. I'm against this idea. To make a Bijou Hokage is insane. Jiraiya growled out, showing how much he detested the situation. Yeah, well, it's not up to you. Maybe if you were in this village more often you would have had a say, but then that would have meant my godfather would have actually been around to raise me like he should have. Naruto drawled out without looking on him as he put on the new pieces of his gear. His words were his way of telling Jiraiya to shut up. He had on a high-collar black short-sleeve hoodie with orange trim and gray pants. Kuromi stood a little awkwardly next to Danzo, who tapped his cane on the ground to get their attention. She will be the next Hokage, it has been decided. The only others who could go against this decision would be the other elders and the daimyo. I can handle the elders, and the daimyo will take time to get here. That will give Kyubi-san time to get accustomed to her position. Some changes are needed to help the village move forward, however. One of those plans calls for an increase in our medical facilities, so we have need for Tsunade to return to the village. Sure, I can track down my old teammate with little effort, I just need some time, but don't expect her to want to return. Jiraiya shrugged, not feeling the importance all that much anyway. This woman is important to the village. If my container and his elder believe her to be important, then I shall as well. You are to bring her to this village. Persuade her however you can. Use force if necessary. Naruto smirked at his vixen as she found her voice. She was not Hokage yet, but with the fact being she would be one in a day's time, she counted as a Hokage candidate right now. Since the previous Hokages were all dead that gave her acting authority. She hadn't read all the legal and judicial rules, but Naruto had read most, and he had been kind enough to send her that knowledge mentally to her. He glared at the fox woman. Babe, you can order me all you want, that doesn't mean I'll lease dash. The pressure she gave off right at him made him break out in a sweat as his red eyes glowed darkly at him, promising intense pain or death for disobeying her. Naruto chuckled as he put a hand on Jiraiya's shoulder. Come on, pervert. She's a Bijou, not a human. She's way more likely to kill you for disrespect than others. If I let her, she will make sure you feel it too. Jiraiya grumbled as he went out the door without another word. Danzo nodded to Naruto before leaving his own way. The Warhawk was already seeing the fruits of making Kuromi a Kage, but he still did not trust her. Just because his protégé didn't mean anything to him. He would be watching her closely. Naruto moved up to Kuromi and pulled her into a reassuring kiss. I'm expecting my vixen to do a fantastic job managing this village. I told you I didn't want to do this. We can't always do what we want. Besides, this way you can see what it's like to have an actual career. Also, I wanted to get you as high a position as possible worthy of your grace and reputation, and this was as close as I could get. He was purposefully inflating her ego as her tail emerged a second later, wagging lightly as she tried to still look pissed. He walked around her and squeezed her shoulders. Think of it this way. All the people who went against and discriminated against me and you now are in charge of. The Hokage is a dictator-type military position. You have the most power, and you can do whatever you want. She grumbled out an okay as Naruto moved away. She tried to hide how much she liked the sound of that, but her tail gave her away as it wagged faster. Just make sure the village isn't on fire when I get back. I still can get some use out of it. Danzo should be able to help you with the political part for a little bit, but he likely won't help you for long. You need to get yourself your own attendant. I don't know who you could even pick, but that's up to you. I still don't want to do this. Sure you don't. He gave her a quick peck on the cheek before he shunshined away to follow after Jiraiya. A day passed as Naruto cleaned off in a stream ready to start the day. He let out a breath of relief at feeling the crystal clear cool water glide over his body. Kuromi should be getting inaugurated soon. I'm not feeling any distress from her, which means things are going smooth enough for her. Now that he had broken so much of the seal, they were still linked to a degree, but at this range he could barely feel her. If my other half is smart, she'll castrate all the males and create a matriarchal society. The hell is wrong with you? Sure, he still needed to get used to Akami, and he was pretty dark himself at times, but that served no point at all. Males are only useful for breeding, so should only be used for labor-intensive tasks. Humans don't live forever. If males are only useful for breeding, the castrating them will defeat the purpose, and the population would eventually die. That is not my concern. Besides, only strong males should be used for breeding. So only ones like you should be kept around. There are others, correct? I am not sure. He would take that as a compliment, but really the only relief he got out of that was that somehow he was exempted from the castration list the problematic beast in his body had. Yo brat? He stopped his inner conversation with his new tenant and looked over at Jiraiya, who had been looking at him curiously. Yeah? How is your training going? I'm not sure. Ever since I woke up I felt different. I can do this a little easier now, however. He opened up his hands and a Rasengan quickly formed in both, causing Jiraiya's jaw to drop. Other than that, my actual unique abilities I have to find out. I am working on figuring out a few things with my bloodline though that I didn't get to try out in the exams, as well as working on improving my speed. Are you sure you don't want the Toad contract? Hell yeah, I'm sure. Not touching that. Jiraiya pouted, as anyone would have loved to have a pupil so skilled sign their contract. Something has been bothering me for some time though, kid. In the exams you said when your eyes turn that orange pattern that during that time you are drawing in the energy around you, right? Yeah? He rose an eyebrow at the man, not sure what the point was. Well, if you are really doing what you've said, then I think you may have achieved your own version of Senjutsu. Sage mode would be how many are able to access Senjutsu, yet it's something hardly anyone can achieve. You are able to do so without any negative consequences from what I can tell, and could hold it at extended periods of time and activate it quickly. You are a sage in a way in that form, but it might be something only you can achieve thanks to your bloodline. So my bloodline allows me to do things in a way that is unique to me? Well, that would explain a little. They continued to make their way to a nearby town. Naruto did not bother to walk, so Jiraiya was forced to not waste time as they ran. Because they were running, Naruto didn't have to listen to Jiraiya's constant whining about how great toads were, and that he should sign. It annoyed him so much that he had to breathe for a moment in relief when some fairly attractive girl went by and winked at them, causing Jiraiya to haul ass for that ass. Still feeling unusually exhausted now that Jiraiya was gone, he found himself a nearby hotel room and rented one for the night. If Jiraiya wanted to find him, he had no doubt he would easily, but he liked his privacy. Moving towards the bed to crash, he did just that as he dove face first and passed out for the next hour. His instincts being triggered, his eyes snapped open, and he pushed himself up as he felt some extremely strong chakra nearby next to someone with low bijou level reserves. Did another container figure out how to release their beast? He thought on it for a moment, and shook his head, dismissing the thought. Nah, they bijou would likely have no reason to stick around then. My situation with Kuromi is probably unheard of. He suddenly went on edge as he felt their bodies moving closer to him as they turned down the hall and moved towards his door. Slowly he moved into a guarded stance as he slowly got off the bed. Knock knock, Naruto blinked as he stared at the door oddly. Well, at least they're polite. Maybe if they don't think I'm here they'll go away. There was another knock on the door, and he didn't move to open it at all. Suddenly the door was destroyed as Naruto covered his eyes from the dust. Well, that's rude. He got a good look at the two who stood at the doorway and his eyes widened. He saw them wearing black cloaks with red clouds, which quickly told him that they were either gay lovers or part of some organization. He noticed one of them right away. Uchiha Itachi-en. Who the fuck are you? The shark man smirked. The kid at least knew who you were but didn't even flinch. He's got some spine to him, maybe I should break it. He grabbed the hilt of the bandaged sword on his back, preparing to strike. Itachi held his hand out, slowing him down. Kisame, don't be hasty, we may be able to resolve this without much issue. Naruto-kun, we don't need to hurt you, we just want the beast sealed inside you. Off back at the Leaf Village, Kuromi's eye twitched as she had to deal with so many civilians bitching, and some even started beating each other up. They predictably did not take well to her being Hokage. Surprisingly, though, not everyone cried about it. All of a sudden she felt the need to sneeze and did so. It was a cute little sneeze too. That sudden action sent everyone running away in fear, which caused Kuromi to gain an even staler look as she glanced over at Danzo, who had an unreadable expression. I told you this was a bad idea. Naruto felt the need to sweat drop a little. Well, you guys are only half right. He didn't say anything else because if they got away they would learn soon that the half of the fox they knew of was actually the new Hokage of the village, making her a harder target. It was good to know that people were hunting his vixen and probably the other bijou now. Now he wouldn't be surprised in the future. He would try to keep it secret a little longer that he had the other half of the Kyuubi in him now as well. What's that supposed to mean? Kisame tilted his head at him as Naruto grinned in turn, showing off that he also had shark-like teeth, making the man whistle. Wouldn't you like to know? Kisame looked even more excited at the response as he grabbed his sword and hoisted it up. At that moment Naruto stomped forward, prepared to meet him. Before he could physically react, Itachi stepped to his side and shot his hand out to grab his neck. Itachi blinked and moved his fingers when he didn't feel any resistance. They both looked at Naruto, surprised to see Naruto leaning back a few inches, avoiding the hand. Itachi tried again, shooting a hand out to grab him. Naruto avoided each one, moving out of the way the moment Itachi moved his arm. He glanced at the Uchiha slowly, as it was like time slowed between them and starburst blues locked with hell reds. His eyes glowed as he actively used his Sharingan and shot his hand out again. Naruto moved out of the way, but Itachi's hand curved to still get him, grabbing his throat hard as he choked. Naruto glared and flexed his body, breaking the grip on his neck as Itachi was pushed back, giving a startled look. Naruto danced to the side as a sword came down, breaking the floor like a blunt weapon. You're a spry one. Kisame showed off his strength by grabbing with both hands and ripping the blade from the ground in a diagonal sweep at him. Clang! Their eyes all widened as a black blade grew out of Naruto's arm closest to the sword and blocked Kisame. Zabuza's sword? No, wait, it's different. Naruto looked at the sword that jumped out of his arm, not sure if it was real. It's never came out fully formed that fast before. 2 kunais went by him as he leaned out of the way. He cursed when one bounced off the other and was sent back at him, hitting him in the shoulder, but he ignored the injury. I need to get out of here. You think we'll let you? Naruto smirked and held his sword in a reverse grip and held one hand signed to his face as the 2 cloaked shinobi gasped at being reminded of different things. That's like how Zabuza used his mist technique? Sure sway? His eyes glowed orange for a second as his hair flared. My bloodline lets me do things differently. He flared his chakra and did a shunshin, leaving in a black and gold blur. They grimaced at the burst of wind that ripped their face, only for something to crash through the back wall, and then the streets below as people screamed. Kisame almost laughed as Itachi looked irritated at Naruto's cry, completely destroying what might have been a badass moment. I fucked up.